All right, welcome everyone to this first Muse Ecology webinar. We have a diverse group here today for this special webinar. Some are from the that regularly attend the Ecosystem Restoration Deep Dive webinar. And the Ecosystem Restoration Camps Foundation is the one hosting with this webinar service right now. So a shout out to them. And hi to Mike and Daniela. Hey guys. So yeah, Mike Muse, if you guys have been watching or listening to the podcast, you remember him from episode 4 on the Buffalo Field Campaign in the Buffalo series. And Daniela is coming up in 3 episodes where we're doing an episode where I went and visited the Savory Institute and interviewed her and Alan Savory. So that's coming up in a couple. And I got to hear, I met Daniela through someone who you actually know too, Mike, Mimi Hershouse of 777 Ranch. And I think Moritz is showing up too. He registered.
Mimi Hillenbrand, yes.
Hillenbrand. Oh, Hillenbrand. I messed it up.
Yes.
Mimi Hillenbrand. Oh, I got it mixed up with Dee Pershouse, somebody else.
Yes. Both beautiful women.
Yes.
For the world.
Yes, Mimi Hillenbrand I met. So she said, well, you should talk to Daniela and this and this. So that's how I met Daniela. And so this conversation's been about a year in the making. And I am so pleased that we're having it now, and welcome and thank you. And to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves. Oh, and hi, Yup from Vancouver, BC. And Benjamin says, beard's coming in like a bison, Tim. Nice. All right. So before we start, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and what you both do. I made a little montage. I was kind of up late last night making a little montage to briefly introduce both you folks from audio from when I interviewed you, and then also to get to know the Buffalo a little bit through some of the photography that Stephanie Shea with the Buffalo Field Campaign sent. So some beautiful Buffalo photos. So we're going to start with that little montage. It's like 3 minutes, and then we'll get into it. But I figured since the the Buffalo is the other decision maker in this conversation that doesn't speak English, so I figured we'll start with some images of the Buffalo just to presence that. All right, so let me do this. All right, you see that good?
Yeah, all 3 of us are younger in those pictures than now.
And then the big Buffalo eyeball right in the middle of the conversation. Here we go. All right. Okay.
When we could say we achieved our goals.
Right.
Well, number 1, when the buffalo are treated like all other wildlife, that they're able to roam our national forests, our public lands, our state lands, and to be able to be a wildlife species. That's all we're really asking for. As problems come, which all animals create when we have such a domesticated society, we deal with that as an individual act and have a resolution for that. For instance, grizzly bears live in Montana. They occasionally create problems, and we deal with that problem as it happens. Wolves create problems, and we deal with those problems. So why are the bison so unachievable? That's so, as soon as we can treat the buffalo like all other wildlife and give them the same respect and laws to govern them and protect them, then I think we'll be ready to move on to our next challenge.
Savory Institute is an organization. Our mission is the regeneration of the grasslands of the world through holistic management. That's our mission. We really, what we want to see is an acceleration in the healing of our environment, and we know that cannot be separated from people and from finance and economies. So we're trying to learn that in very new, innovative ways.
We don't cater just to activists or to any particular culture. We like to invite all to come out and experience the buffalo. And, we also document atrocities, but there's also many days that you get to just go hang out with buffalo and learn from them and watch how they treat each other and hopefully learn some lessons to better you in life.
We have been domesticated, and in so many ways, and there's even our souls have been, right? And conditioned to be certain ways, to be accepted. Well, our domestic animals as well, right? And so the livestock are not the problem. We have taught them to behave in that way. The cattle behave that way because we have asked and genetically selected for that to be the case. And now we're saying, well, the bison has not been impacted as much, domesticated as much. It's like they remember a little bit more who they are, right? Intrinsically. So maybe we listen now a little bit more.
The only thing money's going to be good for in the future is starting fires to keep yourself warm. So, when we start to all unite, we can start to understand that. And I think the buffalo are probably the best teachers about that. Because the buffalo have leaders in their world, but their leaders aren't to, be reelected or to get the most PAC money or to get all the benefits. Their leader's job is to take care of everyone in the herd, because in the buffalo world everyone counts as much as the leaders, and their job is to just make sure everyone exists. You see them walk through the thick winter snows in Montana, and they always walk in single file, and when the one in the front gets the most tired, they step to the side, let the whole procession go by, and then they jump in at the end where all the work has been done and it's easy to walk again. And they share the burdens. All of us count. All of us need solutions, not just the elite. And the more we can watch and learn from these buffalo, I think they can teach us how to solve our own problems in the human world as well.
When that intelligence is so powerfully there, like in this herd of bison we have here, you have to listen.
Right.
You have to listen.
All right.
Thank you, Tim. That was beautiful.
Well, I think we've said everything, so...
Bye, Mike.
Yeah, nice to see you.
All right. Well, wonderful. My lucky number. We have 27 people here so far, and probably more coming in, so it's my lucky number. So let's go ahead and get started. Let you folks introduce yourself. Daniela, would you like to start? And then Mike, and we'll let the conversation go from there.
Very good. I'm Daniela Ibarra-Howell. I am the CEO of the Savory Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the regeneration of the grasslands of the world. And we do that in a very distributed way through a lot of partnerships around the world. We call them the hubs of solutionaries and entrepreneurs around the world that are working in their own context with people, farmers, ranchers, pastoralists, teaching how to holistically manage the resources, including livestock, as a tool for regeneration of grasslands. And we do some work also in accelerating the enhanced conditions for proper management of these resources. And this is in policy, in markets, and in public awareness. So we're a very small but very rich of partners organization. So there's a lot of learning going on.
All right. And by the way, everybody who's attending, there's a Q&A box, question and answer box down at probably the bottom of your screen. So as you develop questions, go ahead and type them in as you think of them, and we'll collect those, and we'll have a really wonderful question and answer later. Mike, would you like to introduce yourself and the Buffalo Field campaign?
Yeah, I'm a pissed off white guy that is now tired of the way the old white guys have run this world. They're leaving no future for our children, and none of them are going to be around when the consequence of their behavior wreaks havoc on all living life on this planet. I was called because the buffalo called me. They had no one down here watching them and taking care of them and listening to them and learning from them. So in April of 1997, I had the honor of finally meeting a traditional Lakota elder, Rosalie Little Thunder, and we decided we were going to have a front lines presence down here to keep an eye, to tell the story of the buffalo, to share the sadness of one of the many awful things our taxpayer dollars do. And so we, to date, have had over 7,000 volunteers, someone from every state in the United States, countries all across the world, and people come stand with the buffalo and they learn from them. And we don't cater to any walk of life, as I said earlier, because really, if we want to solve problems, we don't need to just surround ourselves constantly with like-minded people. We need to learn our opposition and figure out how we can convince them of the illogical ways that our history has transpired. I mean, I'm constantly in battle with the bragging rights of a 4th and 5th generation Montanan that seems to think that their way has done nothing but good. And that's the battle we're entrenched in. And so when people start to look at the longevity, what we're leaving our children, get back to that, Precambrian philosophy of my actions today, how does it affect 7 generations down the road? What are we leaving? What is my impact? And what will we be known for leaving behind? The buffalo teach us about that. As Rosalie always said, all the animals know their place. They know what they're supposed to be. It's us humans who have lost our ways and are the confused individual. And just like to end this little introduction with, one of the most atrocities I've ever heard in my life is in language, how we define what we're doing here as wildlife management. Well, the wildlife don't need management. They know what they're doing. What we need is human management. And I hope that's where our discussion takes us today, because the wild, the nature, the things that have been here since time immemorial know how to exist, know how to behave, and know how to leave it so that the future generations of all their species will have what they had, if not better. And until we look at that as a human species, we're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like what you said too about, needing to speak with people that you don't see eye to eye with necessarily, or that at least you think you don't. And maybe there's some common ground that we could come up. So like, cattle folks and wild buffalo folks, oftentimes they're in these different sort of silos. And so that's why I really appreciate you folks coming together and seeing what ways we can think of where we could overcome some of these obstacles, where wild roaming buffalo can coexist with regenerative ranches. So getting into that, and then possibly how repopulating buffalo can become a part of the food system once they're in the millions again, So we'll see where this conversation goes. Daniela, what does this all bring up for you so far to start off?
So I think, we're all humans are doing our best, but unfortunately through the years we've been we've been domesticated, but also we've been rewarded for efficiencies and for solving problems, with the problem being the context of the design of the solution. So the sooner, the fastest, the more to point the solution might have been, or the goal that we wanted to reach, efficiencies of growing better, bigger, cheaper, the things that got us in the mess we're in, that put this distance between, in our heart and in our minds, between what is a financial drive or a business drive versus all other values that drive our decision making. If you ask any of the ranchers, at least that I have had the pleasure to work with throughout my 25 plus years of work in this realm, they deeply care about the land. They may have made decisions and implemented management that was reductionist in many ways to get a bigger calf, or or to just, deal with a disease or to produce more pounds, rather than looking at a holistic context for the design of the management approach or the solution to a problem. So I think that's where I think Alan Savory, with holistic management, he always says, management has to become holistic. What does it mean? In the day-to-day implementation, it means that we're looking at the bigger picture, we're looking at all the complexity of the systems we're trying to influence or that we're influencing by our economic activity, and understand as much as possible all the aspects. And that's why what Mike is saying is so important. The more information we have from even those who we seem to be opposed to, the more information we have, the more we know, the more we can truly understand and love and plan and design to bring the underlying conditions that bring everything up a little bit, right? So that we can have economic activity and we can have generations of traditional ranchers that love what they are doing and is cultural, but we can have also deep soils and biodiverse, landscapes with wildlife of all types being an intrinsic part of that design. Mm-hmm. And we need as people to become better at that. And at the Savory Institute, we work with pastoralists, with people working with livestock, to try to incorporate the needs of the wildlife into the plans, so then they synergize rather than compete with each other. And what we have seen is a healing of the land that then can support an economic activity, but at the same time, better habitat for the many species. In this case, we're talking about the bison, but trying to create conditions for all we have stewarding in our stewardship. And the more we know about that, then the better we can cater for their needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Moritz is here. He was telling me at 777 that they have a holistically managed ranch, bison ranch, and they were saying how all kinds of wildlife is hopping over the fence. And I know Wild Ideas is similar, but yeah. Mike, what does this all bring up for you?
Well, I mean, it makes you look at whether we want to come at this from a historical perspective or, I'm more like you. We're stuck in this reality. So really the history of it and how it came here has relevance, but we're never going to get back to the way it was 100%. No matter what we do at this point, we've done too much damage. But we all know that the history of the buffalo, that really, when you're talking about continent North America, the buffalo, and I hate to insult them this way, are the cow of this continent. They were the original ones, and to kill the Native Americans and to clear the land to bring over this tamed animal that they could be in complete control of, they brought the cattle over from Europe. And in that process, the whole reason the above board agenda of why they're killing all the buffalo is because of a disease that these domestic cows gave to our wildlife in the first place, because they are, in my opinion, an invasive species. But they are here, they are everywhere, and with proper management and not overgrazing, and especially on our public lands where having a non-native species out there does way more damage than it does an asset for these animals. So, but we can do things, and I know that a lot of the holistic ranchers are doing pasture rotations. They're mining the land because they have to use it again next year, and when something's in a family's generation for all those years, they want that to continue to be their livelihood. And so they have vested interests in their heart through the process that they make their livelihood, that they know that land is the basis for their livelihood. And so they have a connection that's already there. And so getting people to understand the difference of, a cash crop versus a holistic crop that includes your soil, your grasses, your ecosystem, that it's not just maximum profit, it's like we were talking about first time we talked, and And I think a lot of this hinges on what they've done to us. They've made us be the laziest species in the world. We don't do anything for ourselves anymore. We go out to restaurants. There's fast foods. There's, you know what I mean? We don't produce our own food. We're not in touch with how it gets to us. We go to the supermarket and buy it, but we have no comprehension of that process. And in our society, what they label what I refer to as lifelong skills as primitive skills, because they don't want you to learn how to take care of yourself, how to be self-sufficient, how to do things in a right way. I mean, and then we get into commerce, and I've always wondered, how does it make any sense that 80% of anything I buy has a made in China label on it? You know, it's like we've disassociated everything from the idealism of what I think the Buffalo teach the most, and that's community. Depending on who's around you and what they do in their groups, we could be self-sustaining to ourselves. We could, you know, if we build communities and think of our ecosystem, our clean water, our clean air, all these elements that are all part of it have to weigh into our decision making. I mean, that's the problem with these small governments. I mean, we're already talking about the 2020 re-election, and they're spending all our money, resources, energy, direction on this. And we don't think about anything in between. You know, these people that are making all our life's decisions concern themselves way more with getting reelected than they do on issues. They concern themselves way more on not pissing off certain people that they care the most about, i.e. the ones giving them the money, than they do about what's best for the whole world or the whole population. And, you know, how do we offset this? And it's not just an American thing. Most governments are set up in this short-term, illogical rationale where we never are able even to include long-term vision or long-term ways to create change. I mean, my goodness, right now we won't even admit in our country that we're contributing to global warming. How do you battle against this kind of logic, this insanity that everyone knows is, you know, but these old people that are in the dinosaur positions of politicians continue to just make decisions for all of our lives for the future. And when you base that on economic income and quick turnaround of money, you're not thinking about our children's future. And that's the vision I think we need to put out there, is that we're not trying to get you to change, you know, yeah, we are trying to get you to change your ways, but we're not trying to do anything that isn't good for you and your family and your future. We have a vision that isn't, you know, it's like people always ask me, how can you do this? Well, it's because I'm not doing something for my own selfish gain. I'm not making anything personal out of this. If you saw my paycheck, you'd laugh. But it's because I feel I'm doing and leaving a legacy, hopefully for ways that things could be done right, for ways that people could look to have a cure for the future, things that are going to change the way we look at things. And whether it takes a buffalo to pull you in or a holistic cow that's done in the right way that pulls you in, who cares? We all are teachers of a way that's work from time immortal. We all are teachers of things that are lifelong traits that if we could get back to, our children would have a future. The planet would have a future. And we can feel proud that we're leaving something behind that hopefully was better than when we first came. But, you know, this is our uphill battle. But, you know, hearing that we were supposed to not agree because she likes cows and I like buffalo, that to me is silly. You know, it's like we need to all come to this table. At least the ones of us that care enough to fight for the future and organize these whatever seminars, webinars. You know me, I don't even have a cell phone. I keep on to that Neanderthal gene wherever I can. But nonetheless, you know, it's like these are the kind of conversations, the networking that we need to change the future. It's like these people that are the brand new politicians, and I'm sorry, I'll give you a chance to talk
No.
Talking about the, this Green New Deal, and oh my God, they're socialists, and this is what we're up against. And how do we have a calming way to bring this to people that isn't going to scare them to death, that makes them open their hearts and their minds to say, wow, maybe these are the true Christians.
Maybe there's something there. And there's always, this threat that comes when new ideas come or they are proposed by the perceived other party. But I think if we are able to take a step back and realize that if we don't do this one, we won't have much, right? Like you said, so we have to come together and then look at what is needed in terms of design of strategy and then implementation. We're so disconnected, and we have most of our people living in cities, like you said, not even knowing where their food comes from or the impact of how it is produced, the impact on planet, on carbon, on water, on wildlife, on our health. We are seeing one of the biggest of epidemic magnitude what is happening with health in our kids. I was just looking at the video that Zach Bush and the Soul Health Academy folks put together on the impact of the way we do agriculture on health, and just chronic diseases that were not even existent a few years ago. We're talking about 50 years ago. Now we have half of our kids impacted by those diseases, and no one looks at the way we do agriculture. We look at what is the next drug that can take care of that. So when we continue to be like that, we'll continue to go down this path. Can we take a step back, come together and realize that probably all these issues we're facing are a symptom of our reductionist management and approach and worldview, and this win-lose zero-sum game approach to things, rather than coming together, learning from each other, try to understand how little we know, and then embrace complexity as much as possible, and then implement as skillfully as possible and monitor very closely the impact of our actions, and including on our own health as humans, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And that disconnect from nature and land and the food of our and the source of our food and spiritual sustenance has, I think, a lot to do with how we treat then those spaces and those processes. So we need to reconnect, I think, and we need to become more humble in the way we approach it. And these are complex issues, and they will only be addressed with complex thinking and decision making. And that complexity comes also in the form of the people taking a role in the solution. We cannot be just silenced bystanders or silent witnesses of this decline. We have to do something. As citizens, as a buyer, a consumer, as a leader like yourself, or as a rancher, or as a scientist, or as a politician, we need to put skin in the game.
Yeah, and I think my biggest hope coming from this is like, I don't think we're going to solve it all right here, but working relationship is what can come out of this, I think, and I'm just really excited to see you two connecting and what else that might attract in terms of synergy and working relationships to try to creatively move forward in this. But even though we're not going to solve it today, let's maybe get into a little bit of some details, some things that we might address. Since we're talking about the wild buffalo, Mike, you want to maybe start with some of the obstacles that you see that seem a little insurmountable, and then maybe we can see what insights Daniela might have from her perspective, and maybe we could bounce around about that for a little bit.
Well, I'd like to start off with something you both mentioned, reconnecting. The beauty of what we have here is I live in one of the last places in the lower 48 states where we still have an intact ecosystem, with the vast majority of wild that was here when the conquerors came over and started diminishing this country. And so being in contact with these sacred animals every day, living with them. I mean, we have a pine marten that lives right behind our office. We got a fox that runs through our yard every day. You know, it's like nature here is a given. And so first, I'd just like to offer to anyone that might listen to this, if you feel you have lost that connection with nature, we invite you to come out here. We will, all you have to do is pay to get out here and get home, and we'll feed, clothe, and house you and get you out with wildlife every day to help you reconnect that bridge that maybe you have not had the honor of touching again. I mean, the biggest hurdle, unfortunately, in our particular state is the livestock industry. And I, by no means, blame the individual rancher in this guilt party. As a matter of fact, I'm friends with a lot of ranchers that think what the state Montana Department of Livestock dictates as policy to them, that is the inherent problem. That the governance of the livestock industry is also to blame, is 100% to blame for the problem that the bison have. I mean, it started out as a brucellosis problem, this disease that they could never dare to give back to the holy cow, as I like to refer to them as in our country. But at any rate, the buffalo have never done it other than a laboratory test, and they've been, you know, Teton Park, they intermingle for the last 60 years and never been a case of transmission in the wild. But then the elk have this disease, and the elk, because they don't want to kill them, because they know what would happen in the state of Montana, we'd have a revolt. The elk can spread the disease and have to about the tune of 3 times a year, every year for the last 5 years. And they just continue to increase what they call the designated surveillance area for brucellosis. It's now out over 100 miles, but yet the only species allowed to access that land are the elk, even though they're the ones that have committed this. So it comes back to this paranoia of the species, that the prejudice that came when we conquered this land, that the cattle industry does not want to share the grasslands that they deem as theirs, to share it with another recognized wildlife species. So the state of Montana has limited the ability for this species to have any right soever by deeming it an animal in need of disease control. And so basically what they have is at the border of Montana, both on the north end and western end of Yellowstone, they have capture facilities and hunters awaiting them to dare take one step across the property, and they're killed. They kill till they reach a quota. And for the last 2 years, last year it was just under 1,200 that they killed. The year before it was over 13. So in 1 year, they've killed a quarter of the entire herd. And, you know, this kind of illogical management, when this species is so much needed to, you know, the biggest gift of the buffalo, in my opinion, is they are the restorators of our planet. They plant and seed and grow our grasses and all the foods that they need to eat. And every year we'll see a same herd come out and eat in this one area, and they don't stay for more than a day or two. Then they wander on down to the next spot, because when they come through an area, They eat the grasses which spill the seeds. Their hoofs are cleft, and so they act as till machines. And then you got the magic fertilizer out the back end, and you have a perfect regeneration process. And that's their point of life, is to go through and replant this whole place so that they guarantee next year when they come through, there'll be food again for their families. And you think of the history, you know, our great prairies and plains had 14-foot tall grasslands. And they were 100% dependent on the herd of a million buffalo coming through there and eating it and bringing it down and replanting it. And now, you know, those have all gone as the buffalo have left, because the symbiotic circle of life has been disturbed by us, the humans. Once again, human management, not wildlife management. And these are the hurdles. So, I mean, we've done a lot of work to work with little ranchers, local ranchers that really believe in what we're doing. But as long as we have the stigma of, or the governance, I guess you'd say, of the Montana Department of Livestock running all the shots, then we run into these hurdles. So then you look at kind of the history of how Yellowstone was founded, in a lot of our central USA national parks. They were always reserved and saved by East and West Coast senators, because they're not owned by the PAC money that's the places. And so that's why we're going for an endangered species listing. That's why we're trying to take it out of Montana and bring it more to this Yellowstone, this national icon or national mammal. But I'd love to learn different techniques of working better with ranchers, trying to open up that horizon, because really when we get those people, it's like why they've never gone off after the elk. Is most Montanans hunt an elk, so do the ranchers, so do and ranchers get benefits to sell trophy elk tags on their property. So once it becomes a financial thing for them, then they'll stand up for it. And so how do we merge into their communities to get them to be more? But the problem is, if they become boisterous, then the cattle inspectors don't approve their herd next year. And you know what I mean? It's like they have a control over them that's a hard power to reckon with.
Mm-hmm. Daniela, anything that brings up for you?
Well, yes, I think there are two issues, and I think it's a challenge that we see globally, not only in the United States. We see it with wildlife in Africa, in other very charged areas, from a political point of view. You have a political will challenge, and then you have a technical and understanding of a concept that is very, very basic to the work we do in regenerative grazing, which is overgrazing is not a matter of numbers, it's a matter of management of time and timing of the grazing event. So when you can plan around the myriad complexities, and the grazing of any herbivore can happen in a way that allows for all the beautiful things that Mike said, the hooves doing the thing on the surface and chipping away and laying the grass and covering the soil and eating, and the microbes in their guts, activating the biological process and keeping these grasslands going. That has happened for eons in junction together with the dynamics of the predators that kept these herds of wild animals bunched and moving, and they were also moving, going for the green grass that Mike was referring to. So that happened. That was the intelligence within the system. And when we humans come and start breaking apart that, and the predators are overhunted and the animals are now becoming sedentary, and we fragment the landscape, that intelligence goes away and is replaced by our own human management, and that is what is more reductionist. So if we were to say that the millions, how many, Mike, the peak of the bison was what, 35 million?
Yes, 30 to 60 million is the estimate.
30 to 60 million. So there was enough room around the whole, of the Americas to support millions of herbivores acting as nature intended, together with their pack hunting predators moving and allowing for recovery of the grasses and the land, and that kept all the cycles, the mineral cycle and the water cycle and all these biological diversity really abundant. The moment we came, all that was sort of like shattered, and it's shattered everywhere. Now we're trying to fix it by we're not looking at nature when we're trying to fix it with, in the case of livestock, we're saying, okay, it's not a matter of numbers, it's a matter of the management of those recovery periods, of how the animals are interacting with the environment, how long they stay in one place, and how long it takes for them to then come back to that same place. The more you fragment the landscape, the more difficult it is to do that effectively. So now we're saying, okay, we are in a place that has been very fragmented, very degraded by the sedentary management, reductionist management of livestock. And now we're seeing, so we're trying to say, well, there's not enough room for the bison because we need the livestock. And maybe there were policies put in place to protect that. But we know that that's not the case, that we can have more, and actually we can have them working together. And we have that, not only cases of that in which we're working, myself and my husband Jim, we were ranchers in Western Colorado, and we managed 10,000 acres, and we used the livestock to create beautiful habitat for elk. And we had so much elk that we could have seen as competition. I was telling this to Mike and Tim last time we talked, but we saw it as this richness. We were suddenly, the owners of the land we were leasing were super happy to have these elk, and they could, do their hunting or whatever they wanted to do. In Africa, the Africa Center for Holistic Management, where Alan, saw, they had all these insights. We have more wildlife than any of the national parks that surround the ranch, and the livestock we use are at any one time in a very small piece of land, but it's our sort of like biological machine that is going and reactivating biological processes that are lost because the wildlife are now behaving differently because of human interaction. The same in Kenya. We're working, the Maasai and ranchers are realizing if we're going to do anything to improve the wildlife habitats and never lose all the amazing species that they have and that they see in decline because of a decline in habitat, we now have an ability to use those who are there, the current context. The context is there are livestock pastoralists there, the Maasai that are using, and also European ranchers that can use their livestock to continue to degrade and exclude, or to create conditions for regeneration and inclusion. And that's what they are doing, and it's amazing to see how much better these wildlife populations in these areas are than surrounding those areas. So it's an inclusive and an understanding and a paradigm shift in how we do what we do in terms of livestock management and production, and how it can work for wildlife, and wildlife can work for adding complexity and richness to our lives and our operations and our revenue streams. There's all kinds of opportunities, and here in the States, in other places, it may be even an issue of food security. But so the opportunities are there to work together and be a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that's weird to me right now, or the Montana has really just had a severe winter in the last 2 weeks. The last 4 nights have been 30 below here, and just to satisfy the market, the cattle industry has made them start having babies in February. And a lot of those are dying here in Montana right now because they can't handle this severe winter. And it's like how we even take these animals and augment their natural abilities to satisfy this market that we're talking about. So they don't even let their quote unquote food source animals be natural in that process. And I think, it's like when I was saying that they killed a quarter of the herd the last 2 years. Nobody knows science on the impact of a herd of that. No one knows, people don't understand when they augment a birthing cycle of an animal, what impact that has on the animal in the long run. And that's what I mean, getting back to that point, that nature doesn't need our help. We need its help. We need to learn from it. It knows how this circle of life works. And if we would observe that, then we could start to, you were talking about predators too. Well, the converse of that argument is coyotes. They have tried to kill coyotes more than any animal in the history of this country. Anyone can shoot a coyote year round in the state of Montana and most western states. Coyotes are flourishing. You can find them in department stores in downtown Manhattan. That's how much they've adapted, because they had the same hierarchical structure that wolves do. They had an alpha male and an alpha female, and as long as the packs were intact, those were the only two that made it, so that they kept themselves in balance. But when we go out and start killing all these animals, they have a defense mechanism that everyone mates now, and they reproduce at an extraordinary level. So even in our attacks, sometimes they can get a reverse outcome that we want. So to me, it's like the biggest gift we have, and I guess I'm spoiled because I live in the middle of it, but my favorite days in the world are just to go out and sit and watch and learn and listen. Just to see nature uninhibited to be itself, and how it takes care of itself, and how the balance is there. And now we definitely have to step in to reverse our errors at this point. But I think for the guidance of where to reverse our errors to lies in all the knowledge that nature gives us for free every day. We just gotta, as Rosalie used to tell me, boy, clean your ears out and listen. If we listen, we'd be a lot better learners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to read real quick. It says it's not a question, but it kind of goes with what we're saying. Sarah Savory, she said she's in her pajamas, so I couldn't bring her up to join. But it sounds like we have a few Europeans in their pajamas here. So, but I'll just read her. She says, this is Alan Savory's daughter, by the way. The gentleman who invented holistic management system. She says, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to respond to the comment saying one of you likes bison and the Savory Institute likes cattle. Is say that the entire reason my father dedicated his whole life to finding solutions and why he developed the holistic management framework was because of his passion for our wildlife here in Zimbabwe. He was determined to save them and reverse the biodiversity loss and desertification he saw happening. So it actually has always been all about wildlife for him, and livestock are the biological tool we have available to do the job on the scale that is needed to save all wildlife. And Sarah, if you want to come up just with audio too, let me know if you want to join the conversation at all. So just wanted to read that. Daniela, do you have something?
No, it's true what Sarah says. Hi, Sarah and everybody. Yes, Alan's love was for wildlife, and he brought these insights from his observations in wild Africa to the management of livestock. But he gets quite a bit of, or he has, not anymore, but he has in the past get a little bit of just the controversial things around livestock that we all know. But again, it's because livestock is not livestock. Livestock is just another herbivore doing their thing. They're grazing as we allow them to, like the conversation we had before. If we bring that level of deep management of the complexity and those insights that Alan came up with many years ago, and we plan grazing of domestic livestock around those principles, and we're very skillful in the implementation. And we start looking at what are the barriers. Some barriers could be that ranches are too small, don't allow for that more natural recovery of areas that sometimes maybe, may require 2 growing seasons. And the economic needs of the rancher do not allow for that. But maybe the ranchers work together and the management units become bigger. Not the ownership units, but the management units become bigger. And we can bring animals together and recreate a little bit those more migratory patterns of the wild herds of the past. And plan accordingly also to incorporate and host wildlife herds of wildlife species like bison or elk or whatever we want to see happening.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of design and implementation of the management.
Yeah. I wanted to say, I have only met Sarah online on Facebook, but the reason why I met her is because she did this post on restoring lands to give it back to the bison. That was like what the nature of the post was, like let's restore it for the bison. And so I kind of reached out to speak with her about that. And she's written children's books on wildlife and stuff.
Beautiful
So
one.
she's actually live on audio right now. If she wants to, I think she wanted to maybe join for a second live. Sarah, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. Yeah, just what I was saying in my post, that the whole reason for the development of this framework was in order to save wildlife. And I think, nobody wants a world full of cattle. I certainly don't want my children growing up in a world that, they can only see cattle. So I'm doing all of this with exactly the same passion as my father. And I've grown up in the African bush here in Zimbabwe, and I'm determined that my children will have a future with wildlife wherever they go in the world. So hopefully, once biodiversity starts to return, if everybody started to do this, we can increase the wildlife numbers until they can once again start to do the job for themselves. And then for me, that's like the perfect vision in the future. And then we would eat wildlife again and not livestock. I'm not saying there would never be livestock, of course, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That brings up something I was gonna, speaking of things we're not going to solve today, but we can chat about, is in addition to the obstacles right now for wildlife being able to start roaming and repopulating, what are both of some of your ideas, or Savory too, we can leave you live for a second too. Sorry, Sarah. So assuming we get some of these initial kinks out of the way, the brucellosis, the public lands conflicts, and we start to really repopulate in the Great Plains, millions of bison. And I know, Mike, you've said, it's not that you're against eating them or hunting them at all, but they need to repopulate. Like just dreaming kind of big, because we never know what can change. And if we don't talk about it, it won't. What could it possibly look like to have millions of free roaming bison that are somehow a part of the food system? Who wants to start on that? Mike, corridors and quotas, Mike, or what are we talking?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is a very easily achievable goal, in my opinion. Yeah, corridors are our number one link. And as the bison migrate out of the park, we are going to run into cattle in the conflict. But we have the technology and the wisdom to make buffalo-proof fences to secure their cows, because at this point, that is very paranoia. And, back to the earlier conversation, I think, and I'm not trying to slam the cattle industry. This is just a fact in the state of Montana, that the cattle industry makes as much in profit as they bring in government subsidies. So they're at best a break-even business. So I would suggest that with these government subsidies that were given to the ranchers, that we start to invest in what Daniela was talking about, that we can make these mergers come so that they can have a more practical, holistic way to raise their cattle in the first place. And out here in Montana, you know, the limitation would always be people are limited by their income. How much land they can afford to buy in the first place is how much cows they can raise. But if it became a network, a conglomeration between the cattle industry to work out what they'd all need and merger that together, we could start to resolve that problem. We also have this program currently implemented in the United States where people that put cow on their big ranches get a tax write-off, a government subsidy for raising cows on that land. And if we turned around and gave people the option, I know a lot of people out in the Madison Valley where I live, which is the first corridor we need to get back for the wildlife, is that they're what we refer to as hobby ranchers. They're only doing it because they get a tax write-off on their property tax by having cattle. So if we gave them the same financial incentive to rip down their fences and open their land up for wildlife versus raising cattle on it, you know, and then we got to come back to, you know, a lot of Montana, the West, is really impractical places to raise cow. It's not their best habitat for flourishing. There's a lot more grassland on the East Coast. If we started weighing what ecosystems they're more a detriment in than others and try and concentrate them on areas that they flourish in versus detriment, and I'm referring to a lot of the public lands grazing here, then we can, you know, it's, if we base everything on the ecology of the land, the soil content on the grasses, and that's how we base our mission statement of how to come up with the solution, I think then we could start to get to logical places to put the animals, how they could coexist together, and how we could evolve into bringing more and more animals on the landscape. And like the Sarah from South Africa, I believe, you know, that's the gift of the buffalo too. It's not just to take care of the land, it's to feed the people. And it took care of a lot of native tribes for an awful long time. And they're trying to give us that gift. And again, they're trying to come out of the park. They just aren't being allowed to do it in the way they want it. And it's being dictated by management.
Mm-hmm. So to add to what Tim is saying, you know, I love what you say about, you know, what is the best place to put a cow. And to me, the best place for a herbivore, bison, livestock, cattle, sheep, is grasslands, right? And there are some grasslands that have been turned into croplands because they have deep soils and they receive enough precipitation to make it happen. Some others have been put into croplands even though they shouldn't. But there's a big landscape that the only way to feed people and keep that landscape healthy, cycling and doing all these things in a biological manner, is having that component that was always part of the grasslands, and that is the herbivore, but behaving in a way as nature intended, that was in the past because of the predators and because of the migrations where, you know, the grass was growing. Now, if you take away the livestock, now, so our proposition as Savory, so we have livestock producers in those areas, and we have, unfortunately, genetically inapt in many cases because we brought the livestock, the domestic livestock from England and other places that are less brittle. But still, let's suppose they are all Corrientes cattle or whatever cattle is necessary to fit the environment. And we're talking about domestic livestock, and it could be sheep or other type of livestock. We need that gut. We need those microbes to continue to churn. Now, what we're saying is, what if we would, with time, and we always look at what is that ideal scenario and then work backwards. And we do that a lot in landscape design when we work at a ranch level with holistic management and holistic land planning. We look, what is that ideal? How, when it's abundant and when we have running water and when we have, a herd with, thousands of animals, then what is that idea? And then we start looking at what is the reality, and then what are the steps that would take us there that can be implemented little by little. So if the idea for Mike is to have wildlife, bison, elk, and deer, and wolves and coyotes in large parts of the northern Great Plains, and I think there are some organizations that are trying to create those corridors. What is the role of livestock or the surrounding ranches to allow for complementing that, and then creating the opportunities for also informing how those in the transition, how those wildlife movements are planned. Otherwise, it will happen what happened initially to Yellowstone, when the wolf was not part of the equation and we were degrading all the river bottoms. So there's so much complexity that unless we take our step back, we look at what is the ideal, and then we look at what we have now, what is the context, so we make decisions in context, and then use the knowledge we have to start moving in that direction. And I think if that is a shared context, it's a shared holistic context, a shared value-based vision of all these people that come together, and there's very clear economic incentives to move in that direction, could be a doable picture. If we stay in one, we cannot figure this out situation, then probably we'll never get to that. But I would like to see herbivores of any kind sustaining this, again, looking at that vision, or what we look at the holistic context. I like to see thriving people, thriving landscapes, healthy water cycles where we're not having to worry about the droughts and the floods and the loss of soil and the loss of species that is now thousands of times the base rate of species extinction. Is just terrible what we're doing, and we don't understand not only the species we're losing, because a lot of them are not as big and charismatic as some wildlife like the bison, but they are microbes, or they are small insects or small plants and we're losing all that web of interactions and that complexity, and we remove one and we don't know how many we're losing. So I would like to see all that emerging in a way that human beings can exist in harmony with that vision. And that is a big thing to ask in the current context, but that doesn't mean we cannot cast that and start looking at how we begin implementing that, the steps, starting where we are now. So I have hope for a vision like that far into the future. And if we can take one or two steps in that direction with the knowledge we have of wildlife and of management of livestock and other knowledge, I think we have a shot.
Nice. Anything else on that, Mike, real quick? I got someone else to bring up too, to join.
Well, I guess my prayer is that humanity comes to this conclusion without Mother Nature forcing us to. But at this point, I think Mother Nature may beat us to the point. But, this is the start of all this. This is how these ideas get going. This is where we can come up with the plan and present it to the people. We have to give them that option. It's like we're finally starting to get electric cars instead of only petroleum. And, when people are starting to give these better alternative options, that's when I think they're going to start to come to pass. So I honor this process and what we're doing here, because I do think there's steps that we need to be looking at, and hopefully we don't just look at them, but from our coalition, we start to implement them.
Right. Yeah, I love what you said, Daniela, about this is possible if we come together. Yeah. and we do this, like, we can do it. Yeah, it just takes not being siloed and coming together. And if we develop a coalition, or if you folks lead a coalition, we can do it. Anything's possible. So I really appreciate you both.
And there's some folks that are trying to do it, right?
Yeah, yes, there's already a lot of folks working with this, and there's a lot of folks that aren't in this conversation right now. There's a lot of indigenous folks working on this. There's the what is it? The Wildlife Alliance. That's their
you have the American Prairie Foundation.
Yeah, and then there's the Wildlife
the Galveston Wildlife Association.
Wildlife Federation, the National Wildlife Federation, I think it's called. And they're working with this sort of thing as well. I'm going to bring up Moritz to join the conversation. Moritz is here. Moritz, I'm going to bring you up on video. You're going to be a temp panelist, and then when I take you down, you might have to log in again, but it'll be worth it. Here comes Moritz, rejoining as a panelist. He was asking about, oh, here he is. I'll just let you ask your question. Hey, Moritz, how you doing? Can I hear you? I want to let everybody know. So Moritz is in the next episode of Muse Ecology, 777 Bison Ranch, where Moritz and Mimi Hillenbrand showed me and Allison around the ranch. We got to meet them and their bison. Hey, Moritz, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you good, yes.
Awesome. I'm doing well. Hi, Daniela. Good
How are you, Moritz? Nice to see you.
Good. Yeah, I just typed one of my questions was, I wish Yellowstone would hold an auction, because in the private bison world, there's a lot of people that would like to get a hold of those genetics. And then, I think there is ways around brucellosis testing and quarantining that we could move these animals around a lot easier and get them to the tribes quicker and easier, instead of just slaughtering these things at a discounted hunt rate, or slaughtering calves with such a small carcass that it's extremely inefficient to package the meat and get that meat to wherever it needs to go. But no, losing my train of thought, but no, we work hard here. Daniela knows, she's been here. We've had several visitors, but I think being a Montana resident, growing up there and having a family ranch up there that's over 100+ years old, my grandparents and great-grandparents and the family that is operating there now, they do care for the environment, but it's the financial burdens that the cattle producers are having to put up with. They're calving in February to get that larger calf, that bigger paycheck. The spouse is working off the farm, and really, why are they doing that? Is because it's a system, and they're price takers. And I really like with the EOV and other things, I think we just need to work on educating the consumer to make better choices on their purchases, to provide bigger premiums or more income to these folks that want to do the right thing, and then they're able to do the right thing. Because even with buffalo prices, as they are now, prices are good. Overheads for running bison run extremely high. And we try to do, in our holistic context, to care for the land, the people, and the environment. And the biggest restraining factor is financial. And if we could get more money per pound for doing the right things, instead of just being lumped in with run-of-the-mill kind of stuff, anybody who's just making a quick buck, by not planning for that. And hopefully that gets off the ground and we can see the premiums, because the best way to change people's paradigms and mindset is show them that there's a financial incentive. And great job.
To add to what Moritz is saying, so they have been managing holistically for many years, and they've been gathering the data. So we have a case study of all the improvements to the plant communities, soil, carbon, soil infiltration, water infiltration. So all the beautiful things they've done for us, apart from the value of really good nutrient-rich food. So there's a world view paradigm shift as consumers, and I know people don't like to use that word, buyers or customers, or when we make a choice of what we buy to feed ourselves and our families, or we're making that choice, but we're making also a choice in terms of the impact of that product, how that product was produced. Was it produced tearing down ecosystem processes, contributing to climate change and all these things, or actually helping mitigate these processes and building that wealth? So we need to start looking at wealth generation in all its currencies, and that value, that wealth needs to be distributed back to those doing the work. And so the good ranchers, the good stewards of the land. And we're looking at ways in which how we can do that. And so maintaining, sustaining, enhancing wildlife habitat is something that we all want to have in our lives, and there's value associated with that. It's just not monetized in a market that Mimi 777 or others can benefit from, but it's a really good, important thing that they are creating in the process. So we need to start looking at that more seriously, and how the consumer can make those decisions.
Yeah, Moritz, I just want to tell you, if you want to get 100% pure genes in your buffalo herd, talk to Ted Turner. He got given the first batch of quarantined buffalo, and he also raises beefalo and tries to sell those. So there might be your contact if you're looking for those genes. I agree 100% with everything you say, but I think the focus is wrong. Just like organic food, the rich are the only people that reap the benefits because they're the only people that can afford to pay more money. So you're solely putting your product on an elitist group from the first place. My opinion is we need to make holistic and organic the only way we produce food. There should be no variance. This should be how we do things for everybody. Because as long as we're going to have to pay more for your buffalo and your cows, you're never letting the common people participate in your solution. And without the people participating in the solution, we're never going to solve the problem.
It's not a solution.
So we
Yes.
need to focus on this being our standard. This is the minimum requirement that this country should move forward in, that the world should move forward in. As long as we class our food, when the whole problem is we have all these classes of people, and when we earmark doing something just so the rich can make you richer, it's not going to work. It's not going to be a solution down the road.
Totally in agreement, Mike. The beauty of holistic management, and I can speak from experience of having done it myself, I don't think we would have survived financially on our ranch because it was too small without the knowledge associated with activating the productivity via the use of livestock, and also the management of our expenses, letting go of input, and all the rethinking of how we produce. So actually holistic managers are able to increase their profits in the process of managing holistically. So the food should be cheaper at the end of the day. You know what we're trying to work in a system that is not fit for managing small differentiated batches of production. So that also is something we need to start looking at, how we redesign, knowing that is the outcome, the desired outcome, food that is affordable for everybody, a solution that works, like Bucky Fuller would say, for 100% of humanity, a consumer that is willing to pay for good food instead of junk food and junk of everything. So it's also a education of what are we voting for and how much of our limited income are we allocated to our food in the process of healing our planet. So I think we're all in it. We're all accomplices, right? And we're all potential solutionaries as well. So, and then where do we need to shift how things are being done to allow for everything not to be about volumes and efficiencies, but also about quality and local and more artisanal, and those are the steps that we need to sort out if we're going to get to that vision that you just casted, which is a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as long as poor people can get a hamburger for 99 cents at McDonald's, they don't have a debate in the thing, you know? So I'm wondering if focusing on the cattle ranchers and talking to the producers who already receive money from the federal government, so have a voice in there, if they would say, look, we believe our market, our industry deserves to be to this level, and this should be the minimum standard of quality that we want to produce to our country. You know, same thing with our organic farmers. I mean, if they would dictate, there shouldn't be an organic labeling because everything should be organic. You know, it shouldn't have to come to this point. But until as long as you have Monsanto multi-producing this junk at their rock bottom prices, you know, they're not going to rock the boat. It's like in Montana. The Montana Department of Livestock gets $3 to $5 million U.S. taxpayer dollars to manage the bison, and they're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to turn away this free money. And so, you know, we the people need to up our standards, but that comes with, I mean, how many poor people that eat at McDonald's know about health concerns until they have to go to their doctor, you know? So, I mean, it's a whole education thing. It's it can't just focus on cows versus buffalo, or, you know, this is way bigger than any of our issues. This is talking about the survival of all life living on this planet, really, in the long run. So we got a heavy burden, but it starts with us talking like this. But to me, it's just raising these standards, demanding. Why on earth? Well, you know, I've always said we could cure all the world's problems if we had a Bill of Rights that said every living being deserves clean air, clean water, clean food, and a shelter if you want one. You know, if we based everything on what we all need to live to survive on this planet, and that was our goal, to keep these elements pure and clean so that we could live for, you know, time immortal, then that should be the goal, you know. But we've got to set these standards. We've got to say, no, there should be no other kind of food than holistic, natural, organic. That's standard of life, and we won't accept anything less.
Mm-hmm. We got quite a few questions piling up, so I think we're going to get to them. Moritz, did you want to reply any, because they both bounced off of you? Do you have anything you want to bounce back? And I can keep you up too if you want to field questions with them.
No, I mean, I do agree. Yeah, we have this class system, but it is the broken system that we are operating in at the time. So yeah, Mike, thank you for pointing that out. But this, as on the ground manager of bison on a large landscape, this is the game that I have to play in today.
No doubt about it.
And so, yeah, I'm with you. But for today and for the short-term future, that's what I have to manage around. So, but yeah, that's how we get started.
And your words too, they're all important and they're all part of the solution. So
yeah,
thank you.
My heart is singing. Yes.
Not that song again, please.
Oh. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get to some questions because we got quite a few piling up, and I want everybody to be able to be involved. A couple people have said they'd like to go ahead and ask their questions with audio. So if we start to get a freezy bandwidth, I'll maybe have to take Morit's video off or something, but I want to try to leave you up.
Can I put a request in?
Yeah.
If I got to be on this video thing, if you're not in your pajamas, I want to see your face.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I don't know who's in their
pajamas.
I tried to tell people if they wanted to type in, I could bring them up, but only a couple people told me they're in their pajamas. So I don't want to surprise it. I don't want to surprise anybody.
For equal rights for all species, baby.
All right. Well, let's go. We'll start with the first question is from James Ryan. He says, I'd like to know more about the potential of connected native prairie acres for buffalo in South Dakota, beginning with current indigenous acres at Pine Ridge. I am aware, that's Pine Ridge Reservation. I am aware of, and that was, that's the Lakota there, that they were in the last episode with Tonka Bar and the bonus episode on gold mining in the Black Hills and stuff. So definitely visited them too. I am aware of the 2 Turner ranches near Pierre, South Dakota of about 200,000 acres, and that Pine Ridge might be 1 million acres. So what could you guys say to that? Pine Ridge and buffalo in South Dakota.
Mike, you go.
Okay. Well, the problem with the management plan and getting Yellowstone buffalo to go anywhere is that they have to go through a quarantine process, which is essentially domesticating them. As far as I know, and Rosalie was from the Rosebud Reservation and was a Lakota woman as well. And so far as I know, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people have not exerted their treaty rights or gotten involved with this issue because they firmly believe they want wild buffalo back on their lands. And so when we're stuck in these paradigms of the government telling us the only way you can bring these buffalo back is this way, that I think has been the apprehension for their tribes in particular. And then we have the Fort Peck tribe who agreed wholeheartedly to do it for them, and then they shut them down after these poor people spent $500,000 to build the appropriate facility for them. So, you know, the incentive to believe the government word from a lot of indigenous cultures is still an apprehensive, you know, a very gradual trust building arena. And so, you know, I think as long as we're under this governance of, you know, not necessarily the individual cattle ranchers, but the livestock industry of the state of Montana, that we're not going to have, they don't want buffalo back on the landscape. They do view it as direct competition, and they really do not want to. I mean, I'm sure even Moritz, I'm sure you have, if your ranch is in Montana, I'm sure you get prejudice from your surrounding neighbors for not having the proper species out there on the landscape. And so, you know, there's a lot of paradigms that we're working through in this, but yeah, there is no reason in the world they shouldn't have as many wild bison as they wanted out on that landscape. And you know, the thing we often forget in this country is we're not talking about just different tribes. We're talking about different sovereign nations that exist within the United States, and they are literally their own countries within the United States. And the fact that they still exert all this control over these sovereign nations is pretty atrocious in itself, I think.
Right.
Moritz, do you want to comment on Mike's question to you?
Yes, we do. Yeah, there's prejudice everywhere, but I tell my cattle producing and sheep producing friends that, you know, we're in the protein business. We are collecting solar dollars from the sun and packaging it. Yeah, there is some prejudice, but just right across the river from us is the Pine Ridge, and they do have their own herd. And then there are some private producers on the reservation itself, and you know, same political problems, same economic problems everywhere else. And then right here in Rapid City, we've got the ITBC, and I don't believe Pine Ridge is a ITBC member, but no, Pine Ridge has got their own herd, and I do know they sell some hunts, and they are packaging some meat. So, baby steps. And then as far as Turners, I'm not part of the Turner organization. I do have a lot of friends, and I actually was talking to Billy, the manager at Standing Butte, and then Dusty Heppert over at the Bad River. They're actually going through holistic management courses, doing some transects, and Dusty's done some great things of bringing back that land. And there was actually some farm ground there, marginal farm ground. So, I mean, they're doing their part. I don't think they'll ever get together. But I just support everybody who's trying to do a good job. And I hate to sound like a politician, but the thing is the Indians are fighting their own battle. We're fighting our own battle over here on the private side. And, I like Mike Faith, who is from the ITBC. He always says, it's the 80% we ought to focus on, and he always has a good phrase. Conservation through consumption is because his people depended on the bison for everything, and it was a gift. And to look at them as family members, and yeah. The indigenous people and the tribes, like you said, they are a sovereign nation, and you're trying to do business across political lines, and like with brucellosis testing and quarantine, sometimes it's cost prohibitive, and just like Fort Peck, he was saying, that is a beautiful facility. It's very well designed, it's very well built, and don't quote me on this, but I still think it's sitting empty. Mike may know more about that, but it's a beautiful facility, and you could be quarantining animals there. And they put a lot of money into it. So that's all I've got.
Yeah,
Right on.
they just sent the first 5 bulls up there last week.
Good. It's about time.
We had the pleasure and honor to working with them. This was probably 2013, 2012. We were invited to the reservation, and we had a conversation. It makes a lot of sense to Native Americans, holistic plant grazing, because it's planning around, because first it's mimicking nature, and then it's planning around the complexity of the land that supports you. So immediately they are drawn to that. But then, like you say, Maurice, there's political, financial, cultural differences, different times, different rhythms, different speeds in which, they need to operate. And so, but we've had conversations. My desire would be that we have all these landscapes they would love to have more bison, and to have the bison take care of the people. If we can manage holistically to make sure, in the absence of the wolf and other nature intelligence, that we come with whatever they remember, but also what we know about managing for complexity and for a context, not for a goal. I think the potential for creating also a very good outcome for those lands and those cultures and those people is there. So I look forward to continue the conversation with those groups. And again, I think there's more land that we can use that is dying to have graziers on them, because that is the lacking component of that ecosystem is not intact without the graziers doing their thing.
Great. We're going to get to the next question real quick. If Yop is Yop still here? Because he said he was about to leave. Okay, we'll just get to his later because he left already. We'll go in order now. The next is from anonymous attendee. It's the Alan Savory's own explicitly stated goal is double the stocking rate, improve the land, and make more profit. Old white guys have based their decisions on managing all calling living beings resources, how can you do the same and expect different results? Talking about standing with buffalo means putting yourself in their shoes. May not necessarily see their place as being here for us. And what do you say to, no one wants to be managed? What do you say to that? I agree we need human management. And that doesn't seem to be a goal of the holistic management movement. I have many people deeply care about me and still treat me as an object. This idea about deeply caring about the land just doesn't mean what you think it means. He doesn't, well, that's what he thinks. And the Savory Institute, he says they sees, anyway, what can you say to that? You see, as individual beings, as a resource, and that money keeps us in the exchange mindset. So there's yeah, a lot in there about, I guess, objectifying. What can you say to that? Daniela, you want to start with that?
Oh, the thing is, I didn't capture the whole intent or content of the question. So I apologize beforehand if the answer doesn't address what what's his or her name asking that question?
It's anonymous, yeah.
Okay. So the first thing that I heard is, Alan says double the stocking rates. Actually, it's much more complex than that, right? We know that the hoofs and the salivating and the grazing, when managed properly, and we're managing time, not numbers. So in most cases, we see degradation of grasslands, not because we have too many animals, but because that time, that recovery is not being honored. And animals are there sedentary, overgrazing plants and over-resting the environment, over-resting the land. So if we were able to change the behavior of the animals with management, because now the predators are not there and they are not wild herbivores, they just, have forgotten who they were, but they are very close, they're the cousins. So they have the gut with the microbes, that is so beautiful, because that is what reactivates all those biological processes and kickstarted them. And so what we need to go is just to make sure that we're managing, that we're moving those animals to do their thing, but in the context of the complexity of a piece of land. And we become sort of the wolves. And when we do that, we realize, and when we allow the plants to then recover and actually photosynthesize and put roots and feed the microbes in the soil, when we allow all that to happen, we realize that we have actually far less animals than we need, or we could have. So that's why we say our brand promise is at least you can double your stocking rate after you have shifted the management and the behavior of the domestic animals. So it's not just, go there and go and do something else. You become part of that complex environment. So in that sense, that's what we talk about management. In areas in which we humans don't need to be part of it, and we have just wildlife and it's doing the right thing, and we don't need to manage anything. But if we're there and we have domestic livestock, we have two options: either to manage it in a way that is degrading, or to manage it in a way that is regenerating. And we have the knowledge of how to do it that way. And we're still learning, and it's not a straight journey. It's a learning curve. And but there's a better way of doing things. So that's what we say about, it's a human management issue. It's not a livestock issue per se. It's how we humans manage the livestock that can have positive regenerative effects or degrading effects, as we've seen possible. So I don't know if that addresses what else was in there that I could shine some light, maybe, or engage in a conversation, or maybe the person can talk.
I think they're not here right now. So we're just when they see it on the YouTube, some people had to leave so they can see it on the YouTube later. I guess, yeah. Just kind of that feeling of objectifying the animals, I guess. Yeah.
And as a rancher, I would say, just like with kids, you don't objectify your kids, you raise them, you do the best you can. And the same with the animals. I would I would argue ranchers love their animals, and they live for, and the animals take care of them by a livelihood. So unfortunately, we have lost a little bit of the art, because of all the pressures that Mike was talking about from the market and the money and whatnot. But if most ranchers, and we can, and Maurice can talk about it, spend so much time on the land, truly trying to understand, observing their animals. Are we objectivizing? Is that how the word? I'm not sure. Do we objectivize our relationships, our friends, our husbands, spouses, children, just because we're, in a way, raising them, managing them, compromising, negotiating? It's part of the coexistence. Yeah. So I would say more it's a coexistence approach in which, yes, it is a tool. It is a tool for regeneration. It is a tool for livelihoods generation. It is a tool for feeding the world. It is a tool for increasing our water security. In that sense, when we talk about it, it might look like we're looking at it as an object, but there's also this emotional connection with those managing those animals. So I'm not sure if I'm making you happy with that answer, but I think it's really deep.
That's good, yeah. And Melanie G points out that we often do objectify our children too, but
we do,
and unfortunately, but the other thing is that I'm hearing is mostly you're referring to, and Savory is working with cattle, and they've been domesticated for thousands of years longer than humans. I mean, so their ecosystem is the domus. They unlike hominids, they don't even have a sort of a wild counterpart anymore. So it's interesting. That is, there's no oryx anymore. So before we move on to that question, Mike, or anybody, did you have anything to add to this buffalo lovers comment?
Well, I mean, the gist of what I got out of it is the ability to look at something that is a living being as a food source or food instead of its gift. I was worried he or she was talking about me because I said, one of the many gifts that the buffalo give to the people is to feed them as well. But their gifts are way more than that. You think of native cultures and how their whole culture evolved from watching their behaviors. They do a round dance where they mimic what the buffalo do when a predator comes. The adults dance in an outer circle to protect the kids that they put in the middle. And so looking at an animal for just its sole purpose of a food source and not its sentient being, what all the gifts are that this species contributes to this living planet, then we're limiting the scope of it, is what the gist I got out of that question was, or comment or statement.
Yeah. Cool. Lawrence, anything to add before we move on?
I was just going to say, in one of our videos on our website, I said, everything that I have, except for about 2 things, I have got from Bison. And don't look at them like an object, because there's some girls out there that I have had a relationship longer with the Bison cows than I ever did with a significant other. And I was just going to touch on, if I was lucky enough to go down to just south of Mission, South Dakota. They're doing a bison project down there, and I was kind of riding along as a guest, and I was able to witness. And you got to remember, it's their religion, it's their lifestyle. It's kind of like going into a church. If you were going to go into one of your friends' church, that's kind of the reverence and respect that you've got to have for it. And they sing this song, and a bison actually comes out of the herd and gives itself to sustain life. And that is an experience, and just me talking about it just gives me chills. But I was able to witness that, and they're not an object. And it's heartbreaking. There's people that that are in the ranching community and raising animals that have to make heartbreaking decisions. And you got to remember, we're out here alone. We're a very stoic class of people, but deep down inside, these people love their animals. They love the land. They're even if they're making the wrong decisions, they're doing it what they think is the right way. And kudos to Savory and those folks who provide the tools and the resources to have people make better decisions. So, but no, they are not objects. When bison are addictive, and I will say that they are addictive. So be careful. They will get into your blood and stay there. So yeah. I'm in a great business.
Yeah, I know. I've never been the same since looking into the buffalo and meeting them, and yeah, it's like you said, Moritz, and Mike, like you say, it's a life-changing experience to get to know these buffalo people. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that question. Next, we're gonna have a question from. Now, I chose this place to do this webinar because it had really good bandwidth. So we're going to try pushing it now. Uh-oh. You still got the same ringtone, Moritz. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
That's in the episode. That's good. I think that's in the episode.
Oh, no.
She'll be out within a week. Yeah, the alarm. So next we have Benjamin Jansen. I'm going to bring him up. He's got one question is to Mike about he wants to visit, and he's wondering about how old his child needs to be and if his family can come and his wife and all. And then he had another question that involved spirituality and hydrology and thermodynamics. So I'm going to let him talk. Benjamin is also, he's a listener of the podcast, and he's also attends the Ecosystem Restoration Deep Dive webinars. And he's one of my first 3 patrons so far on the Patreon page that I just started, which, by the way, when I'm posting there, that's a place where we can continue these discussions like in a thread format that's not Facebook, and you don't have to be a patron to engage in those discussions. So starting now, I'll be, after everything, I'll be posting about it, and we can have follow-up conversations. And if you did want to support even $1 a month or anything, that'd be appreciative too, but you don't have to engage on the Patreon page. And that's at patreon.com/Muse Ecology. So thank you, Benjamin, for being one of the first supporters so I can spend more time doing this stuff. I appreciate it. Let me bring you up, and I want to see your face because I don't think I've ever chatted with you live before. Let's see. Promote to panelists. Here he comes. Benjamin Jansen. My patron. You're sideways. Turn your thing, man. There you are. The Medici of musicology here, yes. Benjamin, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Wait, Benjamin, I can't hear you. Where's your audio? Benjamin, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me yet?
Now you're on. There you are. All right, brother. So yeah, you want to just go with your first question first to Mike, or however you want to do it?
Yeah.
And hi, good to hear you in person for once.
Yeah. Well, I was on one earlier where I talked about beavers, but
yeah.
Thank you for the introduction there. I can save me some of the. I really appreciate you doing this. It is amazing. Earlier, I was saying when I was rambling, and you probably didn't hear me. It's kind of a unique thing. So there's human components to this a lot. But my question was, I'm expecting a child in May, and
Congratulations.
I'm very interested in coming out to get acquainted with the bison and make that eye contact, which is big with connecting with a lot of animals. And I wanted to ask, what age would be more appropriate to bring out my child, my wife, to be with the bison and volunteer and help?
Well, first off, thank you for your interest. That's really makes me feel good that people are thinking about that. we have no age limits. We invite families out. We try to live like the buffalo, to be as diverse as we can and honor families. Now, a brand new infant, I think, might be a tad bit more of a challenge, as we live in a very communal place, and we wouldn't be able to give you your own space with your kid and your family and your beautiful dog.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I mean, maybe after they're not wake, maybe once they walk would be a more useful time. But yeah, I mean, we never discourage people, and obviously you and your wife would do most of the caregiving, but if you wanted to go on patrol, other people are happy to watch your kids and take care of them. So we try to work like the buffalo as a community, and have everyone help all parts that are needed to be done to make this place function. And we do like having families and diversity here as much as possible. But I would lay the onus on you. Is this your first kid?
Yeah, it's all over, as I like to say.
Well, I defer to someone that's had kids and is knowledgeable about that. But I know the friends that I have that have had kids say the first couple of years you don't get any sleep.
Yeah.
So, you might want to at least give those first 2 years there, and then maybe after that. But yeah, we'd be honored to have you, and I'd be honored to share the knowledge I have and learn from you, your beauty. So yeah, any chance you get, we'd be honored to have you, man.
Great.
I had my daughter Savannah 18 years ago, and was my first child, and I named her after the grasslands of Africa. And
wow.
And she was born, and it was a difficult, drug-free, all the things that you want for your kid. And when she came out, she hurt a little bit her muscle. I didn't know, but she was crying for a month or a month and a half. And now, when she was 2, we were set up to go to we used to lead educational ranch tours around the world, and we were supposed to be in Argentina, touring ranches, regenerative ranches in Argentina. And we were like, should we go? Should we not go? And I had read The Continuum Concept. It's a beautiful book. If you haven't read it, The Continuum Concept. So I was totally into that. And so it's, how the Chihuahua Indians in the Amazon that had never been in touch with Western civilization raise their kids, and the importance of the in-arm space. So in which, until they start crawling, you have them on you all the time. So I said, I'm going to have her on me all the time, and we're going to do what we're going to do. Just like, when you had to migrate when we were, many, many generations ago, you just had to do it. So I went ahead and did it. She stopped crying. She had a blast, and she became the best, little traveler. And she was surrounded by cows and plants and people. And so I would say, if you are comfortable, bring baby on.
Right. That sounds like it makes a lot of sense.
Nice. Well, while we got you up, Benjamin, why don't you go to your next question, which ranged from a few interesting considerations.
I'll be lucky if I can remember the whole thing. Part of the reason
you can see it on your screen, right? You want me to just read it real quick, and then you
can, go ahead and read it.
Okay. Benjamin Jansen says, can the bison be framed around the conservative values of fiscal responsibility and fear or reverence for God? Yeah, he's looking for other bridges. I love that. Understanding the bison as sacred or a wise relative seems crucial. I think it's possible to have spiritual experiences or feelings with any nature, even if it's a result of a culture projecting their own culture or landscape they came from, cattle. We can see the humanity in our opposition and connect with them around the universal human capacity to feel in awe of creation. Getting in tune with the song of life. On the fiscal responsibility value, we can understand the stewardship that bison provide to our continent as crucial to ensuring our land can receive the gift of sunlight energy, natural capital, via a functioning hydrological cycle that transforms sun energy into life while simultaneously mitigating harsh, high energy, expensive weather systems full of energy in the form of water, wind, or both. So what's the question, Benjamin?
Yeah, was that clear to everyone? I can clarify anything.
Yeah, I like the concept of merging spiritualities. Obviously, the Native Americans, especially the Plains tribes, have a more than spirit. You know, like I believe it was Mortz was talking about. I mean, one of the things that sticks with me my whole life and makes me fight hard every day. When I first met Rosalie Little Thunder, she told me, Mike, I'm real honored that you care about these animals, but I come from a people that calls itself Tatanko Ayate, and the closest that translates to your language is I come from the Buffalo Nation. And my people don't look at these buffalo as animals. We look at them as our relatives, and that's how sacred they are. And then, you know, I mean, often I'll have debates with different Christians, and, you know, the whole philosophy of, if you do believe in a God or the creator, isn't the buffalo one of their creations? Shouldn't we want to protect them like we protect your cross and your everything else? Because this is a sacred being that was made by whoever you deem God. And you know, why can't we give it that reverence that it deserves? So yeah, that was what I got from your question.
Cool.
Part of it.
All right. Anything else you want to hear about, Benjamin, or somebody else you guys want to say before we'll bring up the next person?
Yeah. Go ahead and get to the rest of the questions. I just wanted to show that I was using some, this is a cow, and I was seasoning, and I'm thinking, if there were bison in this part, I'm in upstate New York, which I saw a map of where bison used to migrate. They may have been in this area, and that would be amazing to have bison flavor in this area. So I'll leave that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll tell you. So Moritz, they don't sell their meat because it's a cow calf. But Wild Idea Buffalo Company is where I get my buffalo, and that's going to be in the upcoming 2 episodes. The one after 777. They're right down the road from 777. And yeah, they're doing great work. So yeah,
all right. Thanks.
You can get a monthly order. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thanks.
Yeah, kick me out. I'll log in.
All right, I will kick you off and you'll log in. Yes. Remove.
Actually, there are.
Oh wait.
I met some new producers who are going to be in New York, and I'm just drawing a blank. But if you do it, you could find them. They're there.
Put them in the chat if it comes up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Cheers, brother. Come on back. Cannot rejoin. Well, maybe I'll just try leaving you up. It's telling me something. We didn't say that before.
All right, I can mute my mic if you need.
Yeah, I'll just mute you up and stop your video, and then you won't hurt anything. Okay. All right, now we have the next question is not here, I think, right now. So we're going to go to somebody who raised their hand and wants to speak live. Well, actually, Kent is here. Well, he was asking if there's a specific goal for this group, but I chatted with him, and I guess he was saying, well, maybe there's something forming, but there's not really a group per se. As like so many acres or so many bison in a rewilded area, he was asking about that, but I don't think.
Does the National Bison Association
Yeah.
have a campaign?
Also, it was the National Wildlife Federation that I was trying to think of earlier, and they're specifically working to try to help wild, free-roaming bison return to their native habitat. They're working with indigenous folks. I met somebody from there, and I was hoping to get some of them here, but yeah, they might be in a future episode too. But there are folks working on this, and hopefully we can all get together and synergize. You know, so
yeah.
All right, thanks, Kent. So the next one we're going to skip because he's not here. We're going to go right to Christopher, who raised his hand. I'm going to bring Christopher up and allow to talk. I'll just allow to talk because it'll get confusing if we had so many panelists. All right, Christopher, can we hear you?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can't see you because I didn't want to overload it. We got too many, but we can hear you.
That's good because I'm in my pajamas. So
I love the international webinar. Half the people are in their pajamas, and half the people are like, late for their midday activity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for taking my question. Really awesome listening into your conversation. I've been involved with Bison, creating a bison sanctuary in Ohio for about a year and a half now. We have about 13 bison with predominantly white, actually. And one of the things that we've been looking at doing is working on, kind of leveraging this sort of phenomenon and the mythology of white bison as a way of kind of raising awareness around what you guys have spoken to, which I think is the sort of spiritual side of this whole movement. So I greatly appreciate that conversation. But I'm also very interested in sort of the practical side of connecting and unifying all of the different groups that are working on this, and how I can kind of branch out, because I have not been super connected into the other organizations. And anyways, I'm just wondering if there's been a kind of movement to sort of network and engage sort of all of the people out there who might want to contribute something to this work, and then how can we connect and collaborate, and then also the other question I have is how do we, what kind of work is being done to actually kind of to connect properties, like existing properties, maybe land that's owned by people like Ted Turner, and maybe other people with, who have land that maybe they're not using, but could be used to at least begin the process of stewarding and keeping bison so that we can start building up the national population and herd, and create more sanctuaries like the one I've been keeping in Ohio, and then ultimately maybe with the intention of connecting those properties, and hopefully ultimately, once we can actually get recognition for have bison recognized as a legitimate free roaming national form of national treasure. But in the meantime, maybe we can start building up the populations and increase the diversity of the genetics. So anyways, I'm just wondering if there's any work being done in that space, and how I can get more involved. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And like your question said, has anyone started mapping out potential corridors for bison migration? And has there been any consideration of launching a bison rights campaign, such as the one that just granted Lake Erie rights? Some strategic ideas. Thanks so much for your question, Christopher. So what's going on with this, and what can be helped, and what do you guys see as far as how we can collaborate more, and what's already happening? How can we support what's already happening, and how can we create what's not already happening?
You go, Mike.
I love how you do that.
Because you're doing such great, awesome things around bison, right?
Yeah. I love you. Where would I start? I mean, we have two very different things here that I think need to be pointed out, and it's the difference between our group and say, the bison ranching community. The vast majority of bison that are ranched in the United States are beefalo. They're mixed with the cattle bovine gene. They are not pure buffalo whatsoever. I believe Mortz was talking to us about, trying to get some pure buffalo to upgrade the qualities and stuff, or the genetics of it. But we fight for the Yellowstone herd because they are the last descendants of the original buffalo that were on this continent. They have not been mixed with the cattle bovine gene, and they're the only ones that aren't confined by land or places, and they still do as best they can to be wild buffalo, and do not have fences or anything of that part. So I think we're talking about apples and oranges in this arena, but I also, through this and through my work in the past, I feel that is a lost link of we should be working together. And then, I meet someone, beautiful Daniela, and her great work with cows, who I'm supposed to hate and everything too. But I also see the value and importance of us all working together. And so my idea for a networking opportunity, I think I said it earlier, was that if we can get our group of ranchers and agriculture people to get together, and maybe we call ourselves up the standard or our minimum acceptance level, but that we start to make this scream for holistic being the only way to cattle ranch or sheep ranch or pig ranch, that organic is the only way to grow food. All the other mechanisms are unacceptable. And if we can network, I think all of us between that, because that's something that's keeping a clean environment and doing things the right way for our future. And I think it's some way that we could kind of honor everyone's business and honor it for doing it the right way, and saying, not only are you doing it the right way, you're doing it the way we want to make standard procedure from here on out. And so those are the ideas I came up with when he was talking.
Great.
Now I'm putting it back on you.
Mark. Go ahead.
No, please, Mark.
Just you know what, Mike and I agree on more than people probably would assume. So, but I just want to point out that it is all National Bison Association members adhere to a strict code of ethics to not crossbreed bison with cattle to make beefalo. And so, and as far as the genetic testing, I don't try to use the word pure because it's tested to current technology, and we have, it was a lot of private producers through the National Bison Association partnering with universities and the parks to generate enough basis to get testing started. And I am proud to say that we are one of the most genetically diverse and cleanest of cattle alleles. We do not bring in anything with cattle alleles, and we don't breed anything with cattle alleles in their DNA. So Mike and I agree on that, and then so do a lot of national bison producers who would adhere to that code of ethics. So again, it's agreeing on 80% of things. And like when we were trying to get the national mammal designation for bison, the World Wildlife Fund, Nature Conservancy, private landowners, private bison producers, tribal land producers, everybody who was, and even the Canadian bison guys went to Washington to get this designation going. And we were able to unite around the species on our common ground, which is unique, that we can unite across political borders and things like that. But as far as getting connected through communities and organizations, like that guy in Ohio. There's many bison producers in Ohio. He says he has white ones. I'm hoping that they are true albinos. Hopefully they're not crossbred. But you know what? It's America. He can do whatever he wants, and they're still a beautiful animal. But
they're not albino. They're actual white bison. There's a difference. But
okay.
Yeah, the albino are sort of a mutation. They have pink eyes. These are actual white bison that are they're very rare. They're considered sacred to Lakota, and
yep.
Anyways, sorry, I just wanted to make that correction.
But for your landscape, you would be in the Eastern Bison Association. There's people that would have access to good veterinarians and things like that for any of your needs and help you manage it. But I know that I've talked about this before, but the people talk about these corridors, but you're still having a boundary. And whenever you put something inside a boundary, even if it's still the size of the United States, we still got the boundary behind Canada. And the distance between the teeth and the outside of the lip on a bison is the same as the cow. And the pounds per square inch is about the same. And, they will overgraze. I mean, they don't manage themselves because they're in a boundary. It doesn't matter how big you make the boundary. They're still going to develop habits, and they're going to feel pressure from that boundary, which is a reaction from years ago. Well, if we get too close to here, there's predators there, and that's how they're going to form that boundary. But I hope it comes with a very good management plan, and I hope somebody as bright as Daniela is on the planning of that to avoid those pitfalls. But that's the number one concern I have is people who turn a bison out on a large landscape. And actually there was a deal I was reading and following up in Banff where they tracked one, and he actually hung out in a lot of the same spot for a long time. But turn them out on large tracks. If you don't take care of these animals and care for your land and have a plan, I'm going to consider it almost inhumane, because their quality of feed is going to go down, the quality of the land is going to go down, and the quality of life for the animals is going to go down. And I would love to see animals roaming bison everywhere, but then again, it's private property rights, political boundaries, yada yada yada.
Moritz, have you visited Wild Idea down the road?
Yeah, actually, I actually have a conference call with Colton tonight.
Tell him I said hi. Yeah.
So yeah,
nice.
Yeah, great company, great people, and that field kill. You're supporting the bison industry. And Dano has his blog, and actually I reblogged a deal from Dan O'Brien the other day about water buffalo and bison and deceptive marketing. So no, great assets, great business plan, and good folks.
Yeah, I think, like we mentioned in the episode coming up, that there are behavior differences when you're dealing with a boundary like that. Where maybe the full expression doesn't come out. But one thing Dan says, they have been doing a rotational grazing since long before Europeans came to show them how. And he says that because you guys get 10 acres ahead, and he does 50. So, and he says they mostly determine their grazing plan but when they're redoing grass, they'll fence off some areas and work with it, but for the most part, they determine their plan. So it sounds like there's there's stuff to learn about that dynamic of how much management bison need, maybe less than cattle, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they are naturally tougher. They're resistant to weather, and they take advantage of different forages at the same time. But yeah, like for Dan, he's doing 50 acres an animal unit. We've gotten down to 8, 10, 12. This year we're at 18. We destocked last year due to drought. But that's how his management plan. And then you also got to remember he's got some leases and things that he has to deal with. I don't know the specifics, but we don't have to deal with any leases or other outside parameters. So, but no, they're doing good things. And when you take a field of like one of their meadows, it's been in hay production since I don't know how long, and it's planted to crested wheat. Yes, you can make a difference, but we're talking ecological time here. It's not instant, and when you have 50, 60 years of crested wheat that's been cut and baled, tilled, fertilized, cut and baled for 50, 60 years, it's not going to be instantaneous because you're dealing on an ecological time, but it just takes time and observation and good planning, and Daniela can tell you all about that.
Right.
So
one thing I wanted to point out, as I mentioned the 50 acres and the 10 acres, what Dan told me is that's not because they can't get lower. It's because what he's kind of calculated, figured what the bison kind of need to do their thing. Anyway, that's deeper discussion. I wanted to presence time. I know, Daniela, you had something to mention on this. I just wanted to see if you guys are cool going a little long, because I want to get to as many questions as possible. I don't know your timing. I want to honor your time. Is it all right if we go longer because we're over 2? Is that?
I had a meeting at 4, but it's okay. But I cannot go past 4:30 because then I will not be honoring my previous commitment. If that's okay. But you can continue on with the amazing group you have here. You don't need me. I just want to add to Christopher in terms of his idea, the first part of the question, not the corridor, but the collaboration piece. I think we are seeing a lot more of collaboration, Christopher, and groups willing to come together and have conversations, because I think we're together in something bigger than that we realized with climate change and the loss of soil and the loss of biological diversity. We know if we don't come together and each one brings our own unique set of strength, knowledge, genius, as my friend Trey likes to put it, each one brings an angle and some tools and some knowledge and some historical insights, but together we're in better position to do something. Now the devil is in the details of implementation. There's a lot of talk about collaboration, and it's like going to a ball and trying to dance with everybody at the same time. Sometimes it just doesn't work. It doesn't look like a nice dance. So it's okay if we're not all collaborating, but the relationships that become obvious and mature, like we are seeing this opportunity for the wild bison, the more domesticating bison ranching, and those who are working for soil health, needing the tool of the herbivore, how can they come together and have more impact than we had in the past, just working in our own, bucket. So I think when the opportunity comes, there's a self-organizing power, and that collaboration happens. But someone has to drive it, and we all know how busy we're with our own, Moritz running 777, and you running your campaigns, Mike, and us working with our network to teach more and more farmers how to do things better. But is the time ripe enough for us to come together and take it to the next level? And I think because of what we're experiencing as humanity, that is happening more and more often. So I think the time is right for those collaborations to start materializing.
Great. Daniela, to maximize our time with you, because you also have a poem to share before you go.
It's from Carl. Yes, it's not mine.
Let's do it. Let's do it at the end before you have to leave, because there's one question that's from Patrick Worms that I think you'd be good at answering. Patrick. Patrick Worms. He's the senior science advisor for the World Agroforestry Center.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a fun guy.
Yes.
He's a character. And he's also in Muse Ecology Episode 2, Part 3 at the Global Landscapes Forum in Bonn, Germany, where John Liu was interviewing him. That's the tree episode. And he says, he has a question about reductionist thinking and puberty. So he says, I sometimes wonder if the reductionist thinking is not rooted in the competitive drive young human males experience after puberty when they engage in risky behavior and display to win mates. The purpose is not intrinsic worth, but beating the competition. That leads straight to reductionist thinking. Beating the competition is a reductionist goal. Holistic thinking is completely opposed to that. Thus, my question, how can holistic thinking prevail against the competitive drive, especially during youth? Thank you, Patrick.
Wow, Patrick. Do you have an answer to your question?
Unfortunately, he had to go because he's one of those Europeans in pajamas.
Well, I know. I'm sorry he's not here. So because you asked me to go first, see, Mike, I take that too. I would say, is there holistic management, a holistic worldview? I think it's innate in us, and then we become more driven and more reductionist because our brain cannot manage at all times the complexity of everything and the unintended consequences. And like Alan says, we're very, very good at the things we make, but we're not very good at the things we manage. So technology, we've been doing amazing things, and we've, put, planes and computers and everything that is complicated and that we make, we're very good at. But the moment we try to deal with complexity and systems and things we manage, that's where we are seeing the issues in health, in nature, in relationships, in finance. Those complex systems, our head doesn't get, quite around that as to manage properly. So with holistic management, what we're given, and I think Alan's amazing gift to the world, is a framework for decision making that allows us to bring to the awareness all that complexity, not only the goal or the problem we're trying to solve, but all these underlying pieces of human health and ecosystem health. And when we understand them and include them into our decision making and our planning and implementation, things tend to be a little bit more go in a better direction. Now, can we get the whole world and all human beings to stay in that space, or is it more a consciousness evolution? I'm not sure. What I have seen is, in general, women, talking about male and young, women have an ability to capture very quickly that nurturing piece. And going back to us as in the beginning of our times, the males were out there hunting. I was either they got the prey or they didn't eat, or they would get killed. So they were so focused and so at it, while maybe the females were tending the fire and the kids and making sure that the community was, I don't know, it may be deep in our DNA, but can we change our habits? We can improve. We can go a little bit step closer to embracing and honoring complexity and bringing again to the awareness the importance of the sustaining systems of nature, and so we can honor them in our decision making. Now, can we turn the tide in time? I hope so. That's why I work every day in these. Right. I don't have an answer for that, but I am going to live and die trying. Mike?
Yes.
Adolescent male energy. My goodness, what a bundle of untapped resource. Well, I mean, I used to give talks to the Intertribal Bison Cooperative and go to their meetings and had good relationship with them. And there was this really cool guy from the Winnebago tribe, big boy, I can't remember his name. He looked just like a buffalo. And he would take the disgruntled youth and have them come work on the buffalo ranch. And in that process, these young disturbed youth got healed.
Yes.
Because they got to see, you know. So once again, the more we touch this gift, the more it heals us. You know, that's the thing, is we're all so disconnected. Everyone's idea of wildlife is the nature channel. Everyone, you know what I mean? They don't touch it. It's not part of our lives. And so this disconnect is huge, you know. And there was a point earlier, Mortz, that I wanted to really make sure that we define the difference, because I really truly feel the buffalo will heal this earth if we let them alone. And I can witness that. I see it happen in Yellowstone every year, how they don't overgraze. They constantly migrate through areas. And I think the key thing to remember is the Yellowstone buffalo never lived in Yellowstone very often. That was a place they went to hide, to avoid extinction. The last 23 of their kind went to what is now known as Pelican Valley. This is a high elevation plateau. This is not native country to our wild buffalo herds. And the ones that are trying to leave and be buffalo and migrate to lower elevations are the ones we kill. That's what this whole management plan is earmarked to do. So I don't give up faith that humans need to be involved with this process. We don't need to. What we need to do is manage other human things that are obstacles for nature being nature. And we can't say these animals don't know how to do things. They do. The reason your buffalo are different than mine is they live behind a cage. They depend on you as a food source. They depend on you for their livelihood in a lot of arenas. And you make decisions for them daily that they necessarily wouldn't make on their own. And so to not have faith in this natural element, to not think that they can't take care of themselves and heal this earth, I think is not a good way to enter into this perspective. That we need to honor nature, that until we got in the way, there weren't many problems on this planet. When it was in harmony, there was food for everyone. It was a taken care of, you know, thing. And one of the biggest honors of my life was one of my heroes became a friend, and his name was John Trudell. You might have heard of him. And he talks about how words have very significant meaning. And he told me, you know, all of our generation, we're all screaming for revolution, revolution. We got to throw down this system. But the word revolution means circular and redundant. We don't need to continue on this path. And what we need to do is evolve, evolution, walk forward together. And once again, the knowledge that we've all gained through our little parts in this are part of the puzzle to this evolutionary future. And I didn't mean to disrespect you at all, Mortz, in that what I was saying, but to me, I live in nature. There isn't a domestic thing around me other than us humans and the way we draw these artificial boundaries, barriers that limit the wild to be wild. And when we can open these corridors and open our minds a little bit and watch and observe what they're going to teach us, there I think lies the answers to the correct way to proceed in the future.
And still, Mike, when we do that, and even if we don't manage, if humans don't manage, then we have to look at the whole and understand, is it complete? Because graziers have that intelligence, innate intelligence that you talk about, in the presence of a complete component, right? Which includes their predators. And I think even Yellowstone had that, and you know this, I mean, we had this conversation before. Yellowstone had issues with bison behavior, and then they brought the wolves, and that created a more, okay, now we're complete. Now I remember exactly how to do things. And again, the fragmentation of the landscape currently is preventing from all those species. And when I say fragmentation, not only ranches, but cities and roads and people that don't want, wolves or coyotes or other things. So to bring balance back, like that balance that informs that behavior, that is a huge challenge for us, for humanity, especially with our reductionist approach and that disconnect that you talk about, Mike, that came with agriculture. And, when suddenly, okay, everybody's going to go to the cities and we can do all these things because someone is getting feed for us or growing food for us, and we don't have to do it ourselves. We don't have to hunt or even produce our own food. So the disconnect with the wild world is also a disconnect from the land and not understanding, what needs to happen there for it to function properly. So I think it will be very challenging and beautiful, and what a vision to cast, and then start looking at how we implement it to bring again the wholeness of that situation in which bison can roam in how they were supposed to or how they did before, in which predators were a big piece of the equation.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I'm not so naive to think that our country is going to go back. But I'm saying if there isn't a place we can do it, and on Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, where we have vast tracts of wildness, where else can we do it? And as we open the door up a little bit more, and my goal too in the long run is to be able to hunt and feed myself off bison meat again. So we become one of the predators in that equation as well. But I just think that, there's different things for different places, and everything, we have to manage accordingly, obviously. But to think that they can't coexist is where we're at in Montana at this point. That they don't allow this one species out of the box, but the other ones, as we talked about earlier, elk can do no wrong, even though they spread this disease. So
that's a political issue.
Right. But I just, in these cage conditions, there's no doubt we need the human element to make sure that we can follow their abilities, like we were talking about earlier. Pasture management, which ranchers are the pros at. They have to do that or their land is no longer good. They have a consequence to not doing things right. And so I was just stating more specifically the issue I'm talking about in the bioregion where it can start to happen. And if we let it happen in a little area as a test area, we can see how we can work it to let it grow. And then we come to the over, I think, where you're living, what is referred to by some people as the Buffalo Commons, where there is the potential to have a vast landscape available, to have it be somewhat as wild as it could be, and we continue down that road. So the knowledge of all of us is what's important, but to me, it's hard to hear that these buffalo don't know how to graze them, or they're going to overgraze. And, it's like the biggest impact the wolves had was on the elk, not on the bison. Believe me, they're still trying to learn how to eat bison. But, we had wolves here too, and the bringing them in was part of, in my personal, because I lived through this, was a part of delisting them to get to hunt them again, and that's what they. So they're always with something that looks positive. There's usually a hidden agenda behind it, but I think we can make these moves to the positive. I think we have to, and. I'm really excited we're finding all this important common ground.
I wonder, Mike, if there's, they say policy follows public opinion. So that's why campaigns eventually, get the place to risks enough as, which lobby works more strongly, right? But is this something that has to happen outside of, how do we make it happen to eventually get to that place that we can influence policy? Because if that political will to change things is not there, we'll be swimming against the, especially on public land. So it's important, and there are amazing people within the public agencies, but and you can do things, you can do prototype, and you can try things around, and I love to work with those. But when it's the policy that is a problem, and there's interests there, conflicts that you cannot touch, then that becomes a big barrier, and that's why it's important to educate and create enough public opinion as to push for policy shifts.
Daniela and everyone, I want to continue this. And Sarah Savory's still here too. She'd be fun to chat with this predator conversation if she has something. She's on audio. Moritz, you might have something else to say. But I want to honor, Daniela, that your other meeting started 3 minutes ago, and we want to hear that poem before you go.
Yes.
And then we can continue this conversation. Mike and Moritz and Sarah, you guys got time still?
Yeah, I got about another half hour at best.
Okay, good. Let's hear this poem, Daniela, before you have to leave.
This is dedicated to Land Savory by Carl Heitman, and he's with Soul for Climate. Carl.
He's actually here.
Hi, Carl. Did I pronounce your name properly?
Okay, you're allowed to talk now. You can hear you, Carl. Carl, do you have a mic? He might not have a microphone.
Okay, let me read it.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
Do you want to read it yourself, Carl?
Thank you so much.
Do you want to read it yourself, or do you want me to with my accent?
I'll recite it. Sure, that'd be great. I'd be honored to.
Go ahead.
Home on the Range. I'm sorry. Oh, Give Me a Home by Carl Tiedemann. Bison, once the vanquished, are heroes now again, creating better soil, capturing more rain. Grazing nature's banquet, fed by shower and sun, keeping prairie healthy as billions before have done. Grasses making syrup, exuded by leaky roots, transforming carbon in the air into fungi, worms, and shoots. Silent climate army, glory yet unsung, feeding the earth, growing new life with hoof and pea and dung. Thank you.
Yay. Carl, can you send that to me? I'd love to share that. That's wonderful. Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Awesome, team. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Mike, for coming together with me once more. And I look forward to endless possibilities of working together and collaborating for this.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. And I hope to come visit you in person in September.
Yes, and everybody that wants to continue the conversation with Mike and with me when we're together, we'll be doing making some noise, right? And creating some waves around bison and land and soil in September. So maybe Tim can help spread the details of those events.
Yeah, and also at the patreon.com/Muse Ecology, we're going to have just a thread talk there. So if you guys both want to chime in there, let's keep the dialogue going a little bit. I'll post like later today, and I'll send you guys a link so you can. Be good to just chime in if we want to keep the conversation going as a start,
Tim, as you well know, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
That's true. Mike, I'll call you.
I'm going to go. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you, Dan. Love you. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. And Sarah's here too. Go ahead, Moritz.
Well, I think maybe I was misunderstood or didn't explain it right, but when I say boundaries and our bison here are on 27,000 acres. But I hear so many times, people say, yes, you just dump the buffalo out and they manage themselves. They'll take care of themselves. They'll instantly heal the land. And yes, Yellowstone is very big. I don't know how big it is, but when people dump too many buffalo in a box, they will overgraze. They will have problems. And what I want to emphasize is to have a plan, I guess, or consult somebody who knows, because there's way too many people that I run across that just believe if you just turn them out, they're going to do well. And yes, it depends on the size of their box that they're turned out in. And eventually there's going to be millions of them, and that box will be overgrown. But, but with a balance of predators, with a balance of hunting, with a balance of harvesting, yes, it will work. But just dumping them, this mindset of just dumping them out and they're going to work themselves. I caution that.
Maybe
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Mortz, and thank you for explaining that to me. I agree.
Yeah.
We're probably looking at a transitional period, right? Where something like what you guys do at 777, and what maybe something like what Dan does, in these kind of big boxes, and manage maybe, because until we have massive corridors where they can roam and have enough space to express themselves, we might be looking at a transition where it looks like that, right? Like,
we do our best. We're doing our part. It's part of our mission and our vision to leave bison as bison. To protect the genetic diversity of them. And actually, my boss, the owner of 777, Mimi Hillenbrand, is starting on she's on the conservation committee. And so there are a group of us private ranchers who are working with Nature Conservancy and other NGOs who have the same mindset and goals of preserving bison as bison, along with preserving the land that we live on, and protecting the genetics and genetic diversity and genetic uniqueness of these bison that we have in our possession. Because yes, there was 27, in Yellowstone. There was a few down there in Texas. There was a few in Colorado. There was some captured north of Miles City, Montana, and put on a train and taken to the Bronx Zoo. And those animals came back and repopulated Wind Cave. Can't forget what the Buffalo King did here in South Dakota with that group. And so with the research and the mapping of the genome, there's a group of private ranchers and a committee forming right now. This goes to the collaboration part, to preserve that and work together to overcome some of these challenges. And then on the political side of that, the state of South Dakota, there's more bison in the state of South Dakota than any other state or province in North America. The state of South Dakota State University is trying to get a bison chair going. And a lot of the problems about moving bison around is health related, like brucellosis out of the park and things like that, TB, tuberculosis, things like that. And so they treat bison as an exotic, even though it's the original native species. But South Dakota State is trying to get the bison research done and then try to get a uniform standard going from state to state, because you can ship cattle from state to state and the standards are uniform. And from going from state to state, sometimes county to county, or across the United States and Canadian border, the standards for bison are completely different. And, you just take a look at North Dakota and South Dakota, you can go there pretty freely. All you need is a steel tag put in and your vet signs off and away you go. Well, to go from South Dakota to Montana or North Dakota to Montana, yada, 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 there's a completely different set there. So, it's the private guys, the NGO guy, and the state and federal guys all working together and collaborating, and we are doing it on the conservation committee through the National Bison Association. But it takes a lot of fundraising. It takes a lot of donations. You can't do anything for free. So, but it's happening, and it's an exciting time, because we're going to see these health issues be settled, and get a standard done, and get all the state vets on board, and hopefully we can move freely across political boundaries.
Nice.
And you know what, Mike, I'm loving you more and more. I think I'm going to come hang out with you.
All right. Yeah, I think we get along pretty good.
Morris,
Well,
get some skis on. That's where I learned how to cross country ski. Yeah.
And one thing too, Mortz, I mean, the prejudice that's been placed on the National Bison Association, and I mean, the many hurdles, wasn't that the catalyst for Ted Turner open up Ted's Montana Grill so he'd have his own distribution route, or partially on some level in that?
I can't speak to that, I guess, but
Right.
I mean, if you've met Ted, he's a I'm going to do it myself then kind of guy. So
exactly.
That doesn't surprise me.
But
so.
yeah, I mean, the competition that you're having from the beef industry alone puts a hurdle on the ability to raise them in the first place, I'm sure.
But you got to remember that, health, animal health, keeping track of these animals, health papers,
Right.
We're moving around. It's to protect that industry, and
Right.
there's a lot of people in the cattle industry, and to be a responsible bison owner, whether you are tribal, I think the federales need to get paperwork done too, which they do. To be responsible and move an animal from one place to the other, you shouldn't put anybody else at risk.
Right.
And but if we could level the standards and not have these weird hurdles and vary from state to state, like there's 14 states that get along real well, and then there's about 6 states that don't get along at all and make it really tough, and sometimes they're considered livestock and sometimes they're considered wildlife. And those standards from state to state can dictate whether you can transport in or out and what it takes to move them around. And I don't discount the state vets or the livestock boards
No.
for trying to protect what they got, because if they got caught with their pants down, they'd hang them right out in front of the courthouse.
Yep.
Even though
Especially in Montana. No law on the book, man. Cattle wrestling.
Sarah, I see your hands up and you're already unmuted. Did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, going back to the whole point of holistic management and why it was developed, that framework was to increase biodiversity, and that includes all flora and fauna. So I know that my dad's entire mission would be to increase the wildlife, which of course would include bison. And initially, the bison can't just be let out, because obviously we've spoken. Dan spoke about the predator-prey relationship, and it's a symbiotic relationship that actually is absolutely essential, and the balance is so important, predator prey and soil health, and it's completely symbiotic. So there would have to be a management period of bison when biodiversity increased in these areas. As long as the predator prey balance was there, you wouldn't have to physically manage them. But like the livestock, I mean, livestock, if herders didn't protect them and we hadn't domesticated them, they would still behave naturally and bunch together and keep on the move from predators. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. And our here in Zimbabwe, in our national parks, my father was in charge of putting the areas aside for our national parks here in Zimbabwe, and they were the most biodiverse and beautiful. And as soon as they set them aside, they took out the native hunting villages, and the biodiversity loss started occurring and the desertification. And my dad was part of the team that did the research that proved there were too many elephants on the land. And I think you probably all know the story where the government over the next few years culled 40,000 elephants, and the biodiversity loss got worse, not better. And that was what made my dad dedicate the rest of his life to finding solutions. And what had actually happened in those parks is it was never too many elephants. It was too many elephants behaving unnaturally because they'd taken out the apex predator, which kept them moving correctly, which was humans. So it's all about, you know, Dan was saying about timing. It's all about timing movement with predators. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Right. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, this is a really interesting topic. I know when I spoke with your father, we touched upon it. We talk a lot about lions and wolves, and we talked about bison too. And I asked him about, because I've heard from Mike and others that during the Holocene there was a significant kind of size difference and stuff between the predators and the bison, and that there wasn't as much of an effect. And I know your dad did say that he's noticed less of a herding effect with what was it, with smaller predators or something like that. So there seems to be something in there that it might not just be black and white, but there might be like a gradient or something. And then Mike, I heard you mention that it was mostly the elk that the wolf reintroduction affected their like riparian behavior and stuff. So I don't know who wants to go on this, but it seems like, yeah, there maybe is a deeper discussion about like not black or white predators or not, but that different sort of native animals have sort of over the last several thousand years, there's been a more or less effect needed by the predators. You know, that maybe the bison were on the lower end of that spectrum and able to express some more behaviors without that. Mike or Sarah or whoever, if you want to speak to that question, you know.
If you don't mind, we've got a lot of buffalo here, like our native buffalo.
The water buffalo?
Real buffalo.
No,
Yeah.
just real
actual buffalo, not bison. Yeah.
Not bison. But all are herding animals. As soon as there's an imbalance of predator prey relationship, they stop moving naturally, and I call it stagnant grazing. So they stop moving. So bison are definitely a prey animal. They have predators, and I think one of those natural predators would have been man, which started behaving more unnaturally as well. So like our elephants, maybe like man was probably the main predator. I always think it's about a balance. They might have slightly different, they would all have had slightly different roles to play and routes to take and parts of the grasses to eat or different grasses. But you know, I think we give them the opportunity to come back into balance, and they will do it for themselves, but they have to have the balance.
Mike, anything to add to that about your insights being there, because you were there at Yellowstone when they reintroduced, you know, any insights with the wolves?
Well, I'd just like to say that I agree with Sarah 100%. And
Nice.
Right here in Yellowstone, we have the perfect balance. We have predators, we have ungulates, we have the circle of life. One of my favorite things Rosalie used to say is, she's like, Mike, the smart buffalo lives in Yellowstone because you can still pick all our native medicinal herbs. They still, everything that we used to have as a society for our medicines, our herbs, our food still exist in Yellowstone because those buffalo are there with an entire ecosystem. So, I mean, but you know, to get into the realization of the bottlenecks and the cattle, and you know, as they moved out, we would find out what our problems would be. We would do what we do with all our other problem and wildlife. When a grizzly bear attacks someone, we deal with that problem on an incident basis. When the wolves do something wrong, we deal with that on an incident basis. So why can't we still have that same trial and error with the wild migrating bison? And as the problems come up, believe me, we have more than enough two-legged predators too, sitting at that border with guns, just drooling until one of them walks across the border. So I don't think we're going to have problems with excessive predator participation.
Well, thank you. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad, Sarah. Glad you're still here. I'd love you here for this next question. Do either of you want to add anything to that topic? I mean,
actually, there's
yeah, go ahead.
there's some guys, especially up in Canada, and then I believe over at the Flying D, they're getting some wolf pressure, and so they've got some people doing some observations on wolf pressured bison herds and then non-wolf pressure bison herds. It's still in its.
Where is that? Where is that, Moritz?
I believe the Flying. I'm on tape. I think it's the Flying D, and then a couple of spots in Canada, both on the national park side and on the private side.
Well, if you could send me, let's be in touch and let me know the details, and maybe I could reach out to them and find out.
There's people studying that.
Great.
You know?
Well, yeah. Let me know. Connect us, Moritz. All right.
Okay.
Sweet. Cool. All right.
Tim, if you wanna, talk about the most over-researched animal in the world, I would refer to the Yellowstone wolf packs. There are so much studies being done on them, and I believe the original study was the Molly pack was the only one that had bison as their diet. And now it's evolved. My friend Nathan Barley, who runs a group called Wolf Trackers out of Gardner, Montana, he just showed me footage of this new pack that's starting to take down bison, and he had footage of 11 wolves going after this radio-collared mama. And so there's definitely, if you contact any of the wolf researchers, they can let you know what kind of impact they're starting to have on the bison. But still, most bison are eaten because they're winter kill, and they're awful hard to take down. But
Right.
for other four-legged.
Right. This would be a great topic to explore when I get into the wolf later too, and then mix it all up. Sweet. You guys got a few more minutes? Can we get to another question or two?
Sure.
Okay, great.
He's getting a little ruffled over here.
Oh, thanks, Getty. I appreciate you. Sarah says, wonderful poem, Carl, and so does Benjamin. They love the poem. So Sarah, is she still here? She has an interesting question. I'm glad we have Sarah. Well, Sarah's not here, but I'm glad that the other Sarah. No, I mean the one who asked this question, but I'm glad that you're here because you can help us with it, I think. So Sarah, not Savory, says, and Carl's here too. Yeah, Carl, you want me to mute you, or you try to say something?
Oh no, I'm happy just listening. You can mute me.
Okay, type something in the box if you want me to unmute you, because yeah, either way. Okay. So Sarah says, there are conservation models where the community takes ownership of conservation, such in Namibia and other African countries. Like on your father's land too, I believe, Sarah, right? When the national or local government has control, there is no ownership, and the community fights conservation efforts. Is there an opportunity for this model to be adopted in Montana? So there's the question. I just want to read what she adds as a comment to add to it before we get to the question. She says, my father is a Montanan cattle rancher. He's 81 years old, yet is retired, and now it's a principal thing to raise cattle as it was an identity. In the future, however, if I inherit the land, I plan on implementing restoration principles. My question is that the property is only 180 acres. Is this enough to do something if no one is around is interested in transitioning? So there's that question, her particular 180-acre family ranch and what can be done there. And then there's also, is there an opportunity for this community-run model as opposed, to to be adopted in Montana, where the community takes ownership of conservation. Sarah, Mike, Moritz, you guys, you want to go on that?
I can answer from a point of view where I work with a lot of communities here, and I think, you know, if the community are willing to be involved, of course, it's very different here in Africa because our communities are very rural, and so I've just started a project with my dad. We're going to regenerate 450,000 hectares, working with the 5 different chiefs of that 450,000 hectares. So, you know, we have very different political situations and all sorts of things here. But, you know, with the holistic management framework, I always say it's so great because it can't offend anyone once you understand how to use it. It just makes you make better decisions for your environment, basically for the environmental, social, economic outcomes. So my answer to Sarah is, if you can get people in the community that are willing to work together, you could form a community holistic context, and yes, it would be fantastic, of course, because you could add your land together and whatever, which is what I'm working on here in Zim as well. I'm trying to get government to form a national holistic context so that we involve everybody, because the more people that are included in the decision making, for, you know, in the land, because we've fenced it off and reduced everything, the better. If we could open it up more and have bigger properties, and as long as, you know, there's no conflict and everybody agrees that they want to form a holistic context. Does that help?
Yeah. Mike, how do you see any of that applying in Montana?
You know, I would defer to my buddy Moritz here because he was born and raised in Montana. He knows kind of how smaller communities, I mean, it is a great idea, and it does require community uniting together to have a common goal. But like I said, Moritz probably has a better perspective on this one. I'm going to let him go first.
Oh my gosh, playing fire here. I like this guy more and more, Tim. Oh my God.
That's my main mission in life, is connecting my friends together. That's it. Yeah, that's
like, you know, you got to go back to what Alan Savory and Parsons come up with years ago. And like Sarah was saying, but you got to remember, people in agriculture, there's so much family history. There's so much independence. They feel attacked, you know. And when some guy wearing shiny shoes and high pants comes and shows up and tells you this and that, you know what? That's a threat. You know, that's a threat. And then the fences go up, the walls go up. And you know what? We've had this threat before. And you know, if you know, Alan Savory went around and didn't he? I think it was Alan. He went around and said, "No, you're not cattle ranchers. You're solar farmers. You know, you're harvesting sunlight, essentially. Right. You know, but you know, I grew up there, and I'm the president of the Dakota Territory Bison Buffalo Association. And, you know, I get a lot of my friends and neighbors contacting me and reaching out to me and asking me questions about bison. And, you know, I think it's got to be win-win, no deal. And everybody have a little skin in the game, and everybody wins, and nobody's threatened. Yeah, it could work. But, you know, it just takes, you know, one ignorant guy to just knock the whole thing out of whack and put everybody's guard up. And you know, and you know what, I have 18 different neighbors around me, and they're all cattle. But you know what? I keep my buffalo off of their place, and they keep their cows off of my place. And you know, and we can wave to each other and drive down the road, and we do all the same stuff. And, you know, if you're not going to be a threat, but I know I'm rambling, but no, I think it's just education and, you know, get rid of the ignorance and then just listen to everybody. And you know what, Mike and I know I already tell we ain't going to agree on 100% of it, but I guarantee you we're going to have fun on 95% of it. It's that 5% we might choke each other, but you know, just put it aside and say, okay, that's not what we're going to agree on.
Yeah.
But you know what, let's build a good fence and make good neighbors.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, my input on this is, you know, and I agree. I feel the same way about you, man. I think we get along 95% of the time, and I wouldn't worry about the 5% we're not working together on. But it's like, not only do shiny shoed, hide pants people coming into communities telling them what to do, neither do hippies go over very well in those communities. But like you said, when you listen, that's when people care. When you're not there, you know, as I often say, as an environmentalist, my biggest lesson to teach anybody is teach, don't preach. You know, no one wants to be told what they need to do as a good person. But, you know, my thing for something like that would be to take someone like you, Moritz, and have you go around the community and talk to the community, because you would be accepted. You're a member of the community, and you're bringing a new idea that's for the betterment of all their ranches in the long run. But by you bringing that message in, it's going to be listened to. In other arenas, no matter how you did it, it would still have that awkwardness. So whenever you can find a local community member that can bring his community together, or even bring in someone like me that you could, you know, say, this guy's a little far out in this corner of the earth, but, you know, there's a common meshing ground where we all kind of agree, and that's about our children's future and keeping this land intact so that your children's future will be able to have the same livelihood. And so that's the way I see we can mesh through these kind of things. But yeah, that ain't no easy cookie to break. But, you know, just like us coming together like this, most ranchers I have 5 minutes with and they listen to me, we're finding common ground way more than we're bouncing heads off each other. So it's a matter of, like you said, don't go there with all the answers to their problems. Go there with open ears and questions that, you know, what matters to you? How do you do it? How does this work for you? You know, empowering their knowledge to further all of our education, I think it is an important route to take in this arena too.
Wonderful. So Moritz, you're in the working group.
Moritz, we got a job for you, baby.
Oh, jeez.
we got Moritz, yeah.
All I wanted to do was watch.
Oh no, man. We lassoed you in here.
I ain't gonna try and rein him in.
I had
we don't
supper.
know what we're doing.
I had supper with a family member, and you know what? He's working on the family ranch, and you know he calls himself a rancher, and you know Mike just called himself an environmentalist. It's, you know, people say that ranchers aren't environmentalists, and they are. And that's why you guys can have so much common ground. And if we, you know, because yes, he is grazing livestock on the land, and you know what? Deep down inside, he wants to pass it on to his children, and that's the same thing Mike has been talking about. There's so much common ground, and you know, environmentalists and livestock producers, people in agriculture, are on the same side. But somehow we've been convinced that we're enemies, you know, for some reason. So, you know, I mean, somebody living on the land and making a living off that land and has done it for generations, you yeah, they may not be doing it 100% right, and maybe they could be given a tool to do it better, or smarter, or more, but the thing is they still like mule deer. They still like seeing some turkeys. I mean, and they promote that stuff. And yeah, it's the 95%. Just like me and Mike, I guarantee you, on the 5%, we'd be at each other's throats. But you know what? We'll just agree to disagree. And if we can get 95% right, let's get 95% right.
Pretty damn good.
Fantastic.
Good words, Martz. I agree.
So good. All right. I think we're getting close here. We got just a few.
I've got a meeting in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and wrap it up. See if there's any one thing. I'll just read this one comment. A lot of the other people left. Yop from the Amsterdam says, with Diedrich Verhey here in the audience, from John Liu's Ecosystem Restoration Network, I am sure you know everything about Common Land, the Common Land Foundation, episode 2, part 1. You can find Willem Ferreira, the founder of that, and how they create a business case around landscape restoration. If Montana farmers struggle to earn a living off their current farming practice, I think it is quite doable to develop alternative use of the land, including tourism and even hunting. Not my personal thing, but when done sustainably, I guess it can help the cause. No camera, sorry. And then he just adds real quick before leaving. Oh, we got too many comments, but that was the gist. He was mentioning the Common Land Foundation. Yeah, we got so many wonderful people represented here. I love this conversation. I think we'll go ahead and move to the wrap up. Does Mike, Sarah, or Moritz, or Carl, do you folks have anything to share in closing? I know, like I said, we're not going to solve it now, but if we can develop working relationships from this dialogue that move it forward, that's great. And we've definitely been doing that. So this is fantastic. This is exactly what I'd hoped for. Anything else to share before I just kind of say a couple words and we'll wrap it?
I just would like to say, Moritz, you're a great guy, and I agree. I hope we get to hang out in person someday. I got a feeling we could teach each other a lot and remedy some wrongs in the prejudice that exists between our supposed differences. I think that we all give a wildlife, and we are the true patriots because we want to leave something for our children's future. And you know, I don't have to agree with you on everything, and you don't have to agree with me for us to march together to make a change for all our kids' futures. And I feel that we're both on that path in our own way, and I look forward to bridging them in any way we can.
Mm-hmm. Sweet.
I'm just going to echo that.
Great. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, I'll just say a couple things. If anybody watching, either the few people who are left, there are several people left. Well, you know, a lot of them are Europeans in pajamas, so they had to go to bed. But if you haven't seen the episode with Mike, the Buffalo Field Campaign episode, there's a lot in there. Indigenous voices, all sorts of things. That's episode 4 at museecology.com. And then Moritz, you get to hear Moritz and Mimi Hillenbrandt at 777 in the next episode. Should be out sometime within the next week. It takes a lot longer than I thought at first it would to edit these things and get them out, but it's coming, I swear. And also, I want to mention the Patreon page. If you want to help me have more time to do this stuff, you could be a patron there at patreon.com/museecology. And even if you don't want to be a patron, you can join in the conversations there, because that's a non-Facebook place where we can have thread conversations, because I'm trying to get away from Facebook. So the 777 episodes next, followed by the Wild Idea Buffalo Company, Dan O'Brien, amazing author, conservationist, and buffalo rancher. And then the Savory Institute episode, where we're going to interview Alan Savory and Daniela Howard, who did interview, and that'll be there. So that'll wrap up the Buffalo series, and then We're going to start the next season with a lot of wonderful stuff that's waiting to come out. So I wanted to mention that. And I also mentioned I also host the Ecosystem Restoration Deep Dive webinar for the Ecosystem Restoration Camps movement. And the next one is on St. Patty's Day, March 17th, and it's going to be with Lila Darwish, the author of Earth Repair, and she's fabulous. So anybody watching, that's going to be a real fun one. And John Liu actually will be co-hosting with me because we're going to be in the same town that day. So so check that out. And thank you so much. Thank you, Mortz. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Daniela, who's not here anymore. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everybody who showed up, for bringing your hearts and your minds. And there's nothing that can't change with hearts on the table. So I'm so grateful for everybody that showed up with hearts and minds connecting. So let's keep doing more of it. Let's keep the conversation going. We're going to be chatting about it at patreon.com/Muse Ecology. You don't have to be a patron to join the conversation. Just a place to kind of keep balls rolling for now until something else is the place. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for making it happen.
Yeah. Cheers.